pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather tonight to do the business of the city. We ask your special blessing on this council as we deliberate the many decisions which we have to make for the betterment of our community. We ask, Father, that you surround all the men and women serving abroad, the public safety personnel of our city, keep them safe from harm, and we ask your special blessing on our city, Lord. May we continue to prosper and grow. We ask these things in thy name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Councilor Zampa. Okay, we have one communications item tonight, which is an update on the design guidelines, timeline, and consultant team. Elements of guidelines for revision, planning and zoning development, community, and the city council involvement. Sherry Wakefield signs, Development Service Director will present and introduce.
Mayor and Council, good evening. If I might have my presentation, please. Mayor and Council, I will start with a design guidelines conversation. I think it's critical, please, this is not our issue for a discussion at this moment. I think it's important that we take a step back and recognize that City Council has asked us to go back and evaluate the design guidelines, to understand better how we can be more flexible with the development community and how we can meet the needs of our existing businesses moving forward as our shopping centers and our industrial centers age. How can we stay in tune with those needs? This is the economic development. If we could have the design guideline item, please. So as our centers age, we need to have more flexibility in our standards to work with the existing centers and also to accommodate the market conditions. To that end, we put out an RFP early this spring, and we're fortunate to retain the services of Winter & Company to help us with our design guidelines tune-up, as we're calling it. We went out to council and asked for your feedback on the issues that were important to you. We worked with our planning and zoning team to understand those issues which we were currently seeing and those which we'd seen frequently in the past. And based on that, we've put some process in place that I want to share with you this evening. Most importantly, we need to understand that the design guidelines are part of the council direction in their strategic planning effort. The design guidelines affect everything that we do day in and day out in the planning and zoning process. They affect our quality of life, our sense of community, our economic vitality, and most certainly our fiscal and resource management. The city manager's objective this year includes a very specific element which is important to the design guidelines as well. That's enhancing the environmentally conscious initiatives and the city codes that support a clean, well-maintained, and sustainable community. Additionally, the general plan is an element of what we work with every day in planning and zoning. The vision of the general plan: create a highly desirable and sustainable place for all to live, work, visit, and play. The strategies that we incorporated into the general plan every day incorporate the elements of the design guidelines. More importantly, the sign ordinance as well. And we have made significant change to the sign ordinance, over the last 2 years. And as those elements expire, we need to reconsider those which we changed and those which are important moving forward. It will also dictate the need for a modification to the zoning ordinance, not only with the changes in our general plan, but also with those in our design guidelines going forward. So a little bit about Winter & Company. We have with us this evening Norrie and Julie. Say hello. Who are our consultants. They're in town to help us do some interviews with the development community and better understand their concerns about the design guidelines, and also to visit further with staff. I will tell you that I feel very fortunate to have them on our team. Nori and Julie do work all over the United States, as you can see from the red dots here on the map. They're out of Boulder, Colorado, but they've done work in Georgetown, Texas. They've done work virtually all over the country in communities not unlike ours and very similar to our size, all the way up to 500,000 plus. So significant experience in historic preservation, downtown management, image changing, and other redevelopment types of activities, as well as many, many downtown plans and design guidelines plans, which are their specialty, and was one of the reasons that we had put them on as a consultant on our list for procurement. Both Nori and Julie are architecture graduates, Nori from University of California, Los Angeles in particular. So excellent. He's also a peer in the APA and has received numerous awards over the years for his engagement in different communities on different issues. So again, as we indicated, the most important consideration for the design guideline tune-up is flexibility, clarity and predictability for the development community and for the staff, and design elements that are going forward going to bring quality to our design and our community, but allow flexibility in materials, color, continuity of theme, and site circulation. These are some of the main issues that we heard from council, and we'll try to address a bit about how we're getting there issues. The continuity of theme is a really interesting point because we consider 4 levels of theme in the community. So community-wide, maybe area-wide, perhaps center-wide, and then specific to the site. This is our schedule moving forward. Today we're on the on-site work sessions and site tours. Julie and Nori came in this morning. They've been out visiting people in the community and touring the community. We also did a site tour their last visit and took them out to Estrella Mountain Ranch and up to Pebble Creek and through many of our communities and into many of our industrial parks. I will tell you that the good news they told us is, you know, when you're in Goodyear, we have a very distinctive look, and we've done a very good job of preparing the community for this tune-up. So that was a nice, fresh opinion, and I think well welcomed in the community. Moving forward, we hope to have this entire process wrapped up at the end of April. It's a very aggressive schedule, but as we said, we're engaging with the development community several times in that process and with the City Council, and hope to have the tune-up complete so we can incorporate these changes with our general plan when it's also enacted in the fall, and also work on our planning and zoning changes. So a little bit about the existing conditions. As we said, the feedback immediately from the consultant team was that we have a distinctive image, that we have positive results. And some of the unique things that you notice when you drive around Goodyear are that we have very unique roof lines, that we have very unique treatments and materials on our buildings, that we will entertain different types of treatments and materials, all within a theme of the desert palette. So the existing guidelines are very good. What we need moving forward is more flexibility and clarity. So in that instance, we want to think about how we can get clearer links to our policies. Our zoning ordinance provides policy guidelines, but really the design guidelines need to be something that we can give to a project at our pre-application meeting. They have checklists, they have charts, they have very clear processes for meeting our standard and very clear options for meeting the standard. In particular, we're concerned about four-sided architecture moving forward, as we have been in the past, and that we have differing levels of treatment for different sides of a building, that they consistently, the development community, might have a choice about which materials go on which side of the building within a palette of choices. And we need more visual examples to illustrate our concerns. So again, enhanced predictability, clarify our flexibility, clarify our degree of continuity and diversity in building design, maintain quality materials and design. And again, this works 2 directions. It's the staff communicating the expectation early on so that projects can adequately budget and plan design elements which are crucial and flexible, and also for the development community to tell us these are our corporate standards or our corporate design elements. So this is a very complicated grid that might tell you not a whole lot this evening, but this is crucially what we got back from the consultant after their first visit to Goodyear. They came back to us with about 40 pages of strategies of things we could do to address design guide elements that they thought might be important moving forward, that we could add tables or charts to clarify information. And again, steps to the tune-up. Insert text and bullets, insert images and photography, models and sketches, insert charts and tables that allow some clarity. The hierarchy of wall treatments. This is something I thought might be a very simple example for us all to follow and consider when we're looking at a project and a site. So type A. A type A wall treatment is one which we might see along the street or a major intersection or a major entrance to a building. And this has most of the detail of the architecture included with it. So varying roof lines, varying scoring of the concrete, various colors, different palettes of materials, and differing landscaping, and the heaviest treatment of all of those elements. On the B wall, which might be your wall on the side of a building but not the front entrance, you would have these other treatments. So it might allow for, again, maybe additional landscaping, not less but more, because you don't have windows on that side. Other treatments such as trellises or lighting pads. Other treatments that allow then the identification of the facility but not the main entrance. And then building wall C type, which might be the rear of the building. So again, a little more planes, still more treatment of the concrete, varying colors, adding light elements as well, adding awnings, adding different elements that allow you to discern this is still part of the same project, but a different face of the building. And all adding to the budget at different levels for the development community. So this is an example of a chart that we might use to hand out during a pre-application meeting to our development partners. And this is, again, if it were the wall types conversation, we could tell them that we have 3 types of wall types. Here are the differing types of treatments you might use. Here are the differing materials. Here are the differing landscape standards you might use. And it also allows staff then to evaluate the project very clearly and very simply as it comes in. Also gives a range of issues to negotiate, if you will, in that process. I'll leave this up to questions to council, but I want to be clear, there are very specific things that we heard from you. We heard that the sign ordinance must be addressed in a formal way, that we must address the sign, or rather the site circulation issues that we have with pads and infill centers, and that we must provide clarity and flexibility to our customers when providing them options in the design process.
Good. Thank you, Sherry. Let me put it open for questions. Who would like to start? Councilman Campbell.
Is there going to be a discussion of color?
Yes, there most definitely is a discussion of color. In fact, there's a whole section that talks about defining the desert palette and then allowing more flexibility in other tones of the palette. And so yes, there will be complete flexibility in color within the range of site applicable standards and center applicable standards, but flexibility.
Thank you.
Councilman Osborne.
Thank you. I look forward to the full book. Question, did you hit upon the industrial areas? Because I know in the past it was so limited what we had put. I mean, obviously they're large buildings and there's only so much you can do, but there really needed to be some more clarity for those users.
There is. That's an excellent question, Councilman Osborne. So one of the interesting things that we've run into is in trying to provide flexibility in the past, we allowed many of the industrial centers to use a PAD, a planned area development, to create the standard they wanted for their center, thereby allowing some certainty to the owner and to the builders within the center that they would have a similar design and style. While that was a good idea, it also tied our hands a bit in that the center had already defined its colors or materials, and there wasn't much flexibility rather than a major amendment to their PAD, which can be quite expensive and take quite a bit of time. And one thing that we've identified and we'll consider bringing back to council after we get some feedback from you all and the development community is, do we want to take perhaps a step out of the PAD amendment process? Many communities in Arizona do not bring all PAD amendments back to council. They strictly take them through their P&Z or their Board of Adjustment. And so there could be an extra step with a board, but it would take about 30 to 45 days out of the process if, for example, a minor amendment of a color or a material in a PAD were to occur. And typically in that case you'd add, not take away, another option for color or material.
And one other question, was the issue of landscaping and height of trees for, that is something that has come upon us, in recent years, just because trees have come to maturity, and now we're seeing that it's really blocking for many commercial areas.
Excellent question, Councilmember. That's exactly something we discussed the last time Nori was in town, was the standard. This is a very good example of some confusion that can go on with this process. So our current guideline says 1 tree every 15 feet. it could actually be several trees clustered together, and then not one every 15 feet, right? So if we met the number of trees or the intent of the ordinance with the number and types of landscaping, but not in the same groupings, that allowed for clarity of sight lines. In particular, that is a big concern that we've addressed with them, and we've also addressed pedestrian and outdoor areas as a concern as well, so that we create clear sight lines for pedestrian access and create more outdoor areas with shading and furniture for use at facilities such as restaurants and so forth.
Thank you.
Councilman Stipp?
Thank you. I think it's all I want to, I know we've been talking a lot about it. It sounds like you've got at least a lot of the concerns that I brought forward. I share Councilmember Osborne's concern about the trees and the issues that it's posing, and I think a combination of how we address the trees with the signage that we allow will have a real long-standing impact. So I'm excited about what we're going to see. I don't know if it was just me. I don't remember seeing this presentation in our Dropbox.
No, I apologize. So this item was done as a communication item. We were originally thinking we might do a full-blown
Okay.
presentation in work session or what have you, but the agenda got very long. But we wanted to take advantage of having the consultant in town and hearing your feedback. So we just put it on as an information item today.
Would it be too much trouble to have that sent to us?
Of course.
So if other questions pop up or whatever.
We'll send that immediately.
No, thank you.
And staff would love to hear from you, so as you're able to spend a few minutes and look through the elements that we've included, please don't hesitate to provide your feedback. We want to hit it on the mark, exceed your expectations.
Any other? Oh, yeah. Councilman Loretano?
Yes, I'd have to agree with the feedback that we really need to have that flexibility here. I think that's where you know that we seem to have a lot of concerns before from the community. So I appreciate the guidelines and everything that you're setting forth. I think that'll help out a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. So what if a developer came in around the stadium and wanted to do more of a modern kind of, lots of glass, a patio and multi-level, and doesn't fall under our guidelines? How does one handle that? Because I think cities of interest, I think of Boulder, I think of Longmont, Colorado, I think of a lot of places, California, where somewhere in the city they have kind of a different development, something that's really kind of hip. And so how would you do that? I mean, with the guidelines, are you going to have an overlay for certain things, or would they have to come back in and we have to develop that? So.
Mayor, excellent question. So a couple different conditions might exist. For example, in that instance where we have zoning and a PAD in place, we would have to go back and amend the PAD today, the way the guidelines stand. And that would involve about a 120-day process if there were some major design element changes. If we were able to take out a step or two in that process, as we've discussed, we can change that process to a 60 or a 90-day process. So significant valuable time in the process, not avoiding any public input or any feedback from the council, of course, but just avoiding one further step in the process. Additionally, as we talked about, there are differing levels of design concern in this new design guideline. So if we were to say, for example, that one of our areas of development was the ballpark itself, it could have its own design standard. And we would identify then the components that we think are important in that design. And it's as simple as that. Once we go to the new process, we would identify and we'd get them approved through the steps, and off they go. And again, under the new guidelines, providing much greater flexibility. So if, for example, we had a TGI Fridays on one corner, and we had, I don't know, let's say Dave and Buster's on the other corner, one would be red with their signs, and one would have orange and blue. Perhaps some of the elements of the signage or of the treatment of the window or of the parapet, something might be a match, but they aren't compatible colors from a specific corporate image, but they're compatible with the design of the area.
So, so if we did townhomes around the stadium, and you have a very a different look at, modern look at our stadium, we then could have a complex built that was in that same tone.
We
of architecture.
Absolutely. So if our stadiums, instead of being, modern with steel and in green and glass and different elements, were the traditional, perhaps, brick, we might even be able to bring elements of brick into the condos. There's no reason that it has to be the same matchy-matchy, so to speak, in terms of design standard. It's really about continuity of site, area, community, all of those elements fitting together and providing some continuity.
And then one last thing, do we have safeguards up that we will not have to see a brick like we see on the Stroller Parkway? Yeah, I have to ask that question because that's really what Jen told everybody. And so we don't want that to happen again. So
Absolutely, Mayor. I think the important thing to recognize is, we use elements of the roof line, elements of the columns, elements of the landscaping to pull these projects together, but providing flexibility in color or logo or something of that nature is what we're intending.
good. Of course you, and Councilman Campos, she has a question.
Yeah, that just triggered, what if we get a developer that comes in and says, I want to develop a 6 or 10-story hotel? Are we going to have a little flexibility that we can deal with it instead of saying, no, Goodyear's not, you can't do it in Goodyear?
So, excellent question. Actually, if we're talking about the ballpark area, we have density that allows us to do that. We go to 83 feet today under the existing zoning in the ballpark area, for example. But really what we're talking about in that case would be more of a zoning issue and a land use issue. And our new land use standards in the general plan, as we come back to you, that there are districts that allow for that commercial and residential, and there are height restrictions on those uses. So we're proposing to go from about 40 different land use types to about 8 or 9. And we'll need to then change the zoning ordinance to allow more flexibility in those land use areas. And so, again, the intent is once we modify the zoning ordinance and the land use maps, that there'll be less times when a developer would have to come back to council for a change in those PAD standards or their height or density standard.
Because the city center, what's the height that we finally look in the city center, right in the center? Is it 8 stories?
83 feet, that's correct.
Pardon me?
It's 83 feet, Mayor.
Okay, and that's how many stories?
It would be 7 plus.
7 or 8 stories, okay. So that's,
I was thinking of maybe if West Valley Hospital decided to go higher than 6,
yeah.
Right. Today, our standards would require an amendment to their PAD, but as we amend that process, again, we can take time and steps out of that process.
Yeah, the Gilzer Towers, yeah, right. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, and thank you for bringing, we have Julie and Norway with us this evening. It was nice meeting them, and we're looking forward to meeting with you again. Okay? All right, let's go on, and I need my glasses before I can go on. Now is the time for citizens who would like to address the city council on any non-agenda item. Do we have any cards this evening?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak that didn't fill out a card? All right. Then let's go on to the consent agenda. Would the city clerk please read consent agenda item 6.1 and 6.2 by title only?
Item 6.1, approve draft minutes from a special meeting held on February 3rd, 2014, and a special meeting 1, a regular meeting, and a special meeting 2 held on February 10th, 2014. Item 6.2, adopt resolution 14-1597 authorizing the city manager or designee to execute all documents necessary to enter into the emergency base station agreement between Banner Health and City of Goodyear, serving as an advanced life support ALS base medical facility for the fire department.
Thank you. Does anyone from the public wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Does anyone from the council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Could I please have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Stipp and a second by Vice Mayor Pizzillo. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Homan?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Let's go to number 7 on business. The first item on business is a reappointment to the Fire and Safety Building Code Enforcement Appeals Board. Ed Cooley, Chief Building Official, 2%.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to present Mr. Kelly Reynolds. He's going to be reappointed for his 5-year term on the Board of Appeals. He served a 1-year term, and he was our appointee from the Council Subcommittee. This is Mr. Kelly Reynolds.
Hello. Thank you.
thank you again for your consideration to do this. It's a lot of, it's effort on your time and your schedule.
So it's important.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you. Are there any speaker cards that were brought forward?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Is there anybody from the audience who would like to speak? All right. Then we're going to go ahead. Could I please have a motion and we'll do that. You're waiting to do the other, though.
Right.
Okay, I didn't think, I thought you're done with your presentation,
Yes.
though. Thank you. Okay. Can I have a motion and a second to reappoint Kelly Reynolds to serve on the Fire Safety Building Code Enforcement Appeals Board with a term of expiring December 31st, 2018?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion from Councilman Pizzillo and a second from Councilman Holman. Open for council discussion? Yes.
As part of the
Councilman Osborne.
subcommittee, we really thank you, Mr. Reynolds, for being part of this great city. Thank you.
All right, let's vote on this. Oh, did you have something?
No, I just wanted to,
Vice Mayor Pizzillo.
no, I just want to thank Kelly again for stepping up.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so let's go. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Now, will the city clerk please administer the oath of loyalty?
I, Kelly P. Reynolds,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
and laws
and laws
of the State of Arizona,
of the State of Arizona,
that I will bear
that I will bear
true faith
true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the same
to the same
and defend them
and defend them
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
and that I will faithfully
and I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of board member
of board member
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability.
so I do affirm.
So I do affirm. Thank you.
Let's give a round of applause for Mr. Kelly. And Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you.
All right. Let's go to the next item, which is 7.2, 14-5214, to approve a license agreement with Epcor Water Arizona, Inc. for use of public right-of-ways. Linda Beals, Real Estate Coordinator, to present. Linda?
Yes. Can I get Elmo up, please? Thank you. Mayor and council members, as noted, my name is Linda Beals. I'm the real estate coordinator here at the City of Goodyear. Here tonight to present the license agreement for Epcor. This particular agreement is for a 5-year license in order to use the rights of ways for city to put their water lines and such in those areas. It's their fee on this is 2% of gross revenues. They will be paying that quarterly. They'll be providing us reports, and in with that will come their 2% of their gross revenues. The purpose of this, as noted, is to allow for the placement, maintenance, and operation of their potable water distribution facilities within city rights of way and our public utility areas. The benefit that this will serve to the city is it will allow for the continued ability for Epcor to continue to service the folks within their service areas. Their service area is located primarily around the Meritage subdivision and the prison area. Their original service area started with the prison, and then it's expanded as time has gone on. Their facilities have expanded out to serve Meritage. Over time, that area is expected to continue to have more development of homes, and we will expect to see additional revenues from them as they continue to take on additional homes service in that area. So essentially, that's it in a nutshell tonight.
All right, great, thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Is anybody in the audience would like to speak? All right, let's go on. Can I have a motion and a second to approve the insurance of a 5-year license to Epcor Water Arizona, Inc. and Arizona Corporation Epcor for, excuse me, I have to turn the page, for the use of a public right-of-way to provide potable drinking water services to the properties within the boundaries of their certificate of convenience necessary within the city of Goodyear. So could I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
I heard a motion from Councilman Osborne, a second from Councilman Laura Connell. Open for council discussion. You did all right, you did the what? The motion? Oh, you sounded like Joanne.
Oh, sorry.
All right, I'm sorry. To correct the record, the motion was by Councilman Campo. Councilman, Vice Mayor Stipp. Vice Mayor Pizzillo.
You just got a promotion.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo. Don't you love it?
I feel better. I thought I was struggling tonight.
You have to laugh about it because it happens continuously, but I know you're Vice Mayor. Okay, go for it.
Question, is the 2% a typical fee for a utility license agreement?
It's consistent with Southwest Gas, who is out in that we have an agreement with, as well as APS.
Okay.
Any other questions? Councilman Stipp.
Demoted once again. I assume that's consistent with what we have at Liberty as well.
Liberty is a slightly different situation. We're looking into it now to try to figure out how we're going to approach it as time goes on. But Liberty has a little bit different history in the fact that it started out as a part of the development of Palm Valley. It was actually owned by Suncor. And we used to have an awful lot of partnerships with them, and so we're looking into how that needs to be transitioned and what we need to do with Liberty, because it kind of started out as a little different animal than what epcor did.
Okay, thanks.
We've grown as a city since that last agreement, right?
Yeah.
Councilman Osborne?
And I apologize, Joe, I did not hear what your question was, so hopefully I'm not repeating it. It says in here that it will be based on approval of the city voters?
When we move to franchise agreement, right now they're operating under a license. And again, it's kind of the same situation. They've started out very small, just servicing essentially the prison. They've begun expanding, and we're looking at what the process will be. We know the process it'll be the same one we've gone through in the past with APS and Southwest Gas. But this is an interim device to allow them to continue to operate within the city rights-of-way, but the city does need to begin moving forward with the actual franchise agreement, which will need to go to the voters. The license allows them to operate in the interim until we move to the franchise.
And I would assume that we would not be doing some kind of special election or
No,
ballot or whatever.
This would definitely not
Thank
warrant
you.
a special
I would
election.
hope not, but I was questioning that. Thank you.
So, Mayor,
Okay, yes, Councilman Campo.
is each contract for 5 years? I mean, do they come back every 5 years and ask us to renew?
License agreements are typically short in their duration. They're also cancelable very quickly, usually within 30 to 60 days. In the case of this one, I believe it's 60.
Right.
But franchise agreements, on the other hand, tend to be much longer. I believe,
Well, they're probably 25 years.
yeah,
but-
I was thinking 20.
Yeah.
I had it noted. 25 years, you're correct.
That's what I thought, yeah. Okay. And it stays at the same percentage?
Right, there's no increase in the percentage. We'll get our increases based upon the users and how many users come online.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are we set for a vote? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Now, the next item is 7.3, to consider a preliminary plat for Estrella Phase 1 parcels 1237, 1239, and 12 and 1240. Karen Craver, Planner 3, will present. Oh,
He's
Karen,
changed.
you've changed. Hello there. Joe Schmidt will present.
Poor Joe.
Madam Mayor and Council, sorry to disappoint you, but it's me tonight.
Well, sometimes we have to tolerate some things, you know, so,
I'll try not to disappoint.
yeah.
As you noted, this is the preliminary plat for Estrella Phase 1, parcels 1237, 1239, and 1240, which is generally located on the east side of Estrella Parkway. And my cursor works about as well as the microphones. Anyway, it's just east of Estrella Parkway in the vicinity of Spring Drive and north of the intersection of Estrella Parkway and San Miguel on the south. The proposal is to subdivide the 39 acres into 126 single-family lots and 12 tracts. The council approved an amendment for this PEAD back in 2010. At that time, the existing land uses were changed from townhome and multifamily and church to single-family residential at 3.9 units per acre. And in October of 2010, a preliminary plat was approved for the area that's outlined in red and also including parcel 12.41 to the north. However, that plat was not acted upon and then it since expired. Newland has brought back this version of the preliminary plat, leaving out parcel 12.41 with an idea that that area might be suitable for something other than traditional single-family product, and the area with outlined in red is being proposed according to more standard single-family residential product. What did I do now? I am going to make you sorry that I showed up tonight.
We're having trouble this evening with the equipment.
No, I don't want that. There it is. Thank you. Somebody took control of the mouse and helped me out. I appreciate that very much. This is what the preliminary plat looks like. As I said, it has 126 single-family lots, 12 tracts. It's intended to be developed in a single phase. The typical lot within the subdivision will be 47 feet wide and 115 feet deep, but the subdivision also includes lots up to 72 feet wide, and the average lot area is almost 7,000 square feet. Standard single-family detached products are planned for the subdivision. Previously, in a segmentation study that Newland had done, there was a lack of lot product of this size. And so this area is being developed as proposed. Access to the subdivision is provided at 2 points off of Estrella Parkway. One is a direct access on Estrella at the south, kind of at the lower left of the slide. And the second one is via Spring Drive up at the top of the page, which is adjacent to the fire station 182. All the roads will be built to city standards. The subdivision will be served by the City of Goodyear Water and Sewer pursuant to the Northern Water Solutions Facility Agreement. The site is traversed by 2 washes that provide open spaces between the groupings of lots, and then there will be a central amenity with a ramada, picnic tables, and turf play area near the top of the subdivision there. In that open space area. The common areas will be watered with non-potable water from a private non-potable water system.
That's good.
And staff finds that the plat is consistent with the land use development standards and density approved for the PAD amendment for these parcels and the requirements of the subdivision regulations. And we are recommending it for approval subject to the stipulations in the agenda support material. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard the preliminary plat on January 15th and recommended it for approval by a vote of 7-0. And that concludes my presentation. I'll stand for any
Mr.
questions you
Schmidt,
might have.
appreciate it. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Would anybody from the audience like to speak? All right. Could I please have, and I will look at you this time so I know who's talking to me, or at least raise your hand. Can I have a motion and a second to approve a request for the preliminary plat for the Estrella Phase 1 parcels 1237, 1239, and 1240, generally located east of Estrella Parkway from West Spring Drive on the north to the intersection of Estrella Parkway and San Miguel on the south, subject to stipulations. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'm going to give it here to Councilman Loretano, and a second
That one's funny. Second.
from Councilman Osborne. Open for council discussion. Councilman Loretano.
Okay, I was trying to look, the little cutout there, there's like a little triangle kind of cutout. What is that going to be? Or I just can see that somebody else owns it, or what's that?
Yeah, Mayor, Lord, Councilmember Loretano, that is an area that is owned by another party and is zoned for townhomes.
Okay.
Excuse me, zone for what?
Townhomes?
Oh, townhomes.
Anybody? Yes, Vice Mayor Pizzolo?
Is this tied to, remember we had a water agreement that we were working to make sure that there's enough water for the estrella to grow? Is this part of it, that agreement that we were working on?
Mayor, Lord, Council, Vice Mayor Pizzolo, yes, it is, and it's, the units that would be produced in this subdivision would be accounted for against the number of units that were provided in the Northern Water Facilities, Northern Solution Water Facilities Agreement.
And as I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, was that finalized, that solution? Or we did a,
yes.
okay, so we're good for water, they
There
meet
were a
these
certain number of
requirements?
lots that were authorized that they were authorized to proceed with until certain improvements were made.
Right.
But basically, those improvements have either been completely made or guaranteed and will be completed shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, great, thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Would anybody from the audience like to speak? Okay. Can I have a motion and a second to approve a request for a preliminary plat for Estrella? I don't think I have to do this yet.
Mayor, you already
I think
got a
I'm done
motion
with
in a
this. I'm
second.
already done with this. Did you see I caught on this time? Okay, we have a motion and a second. So let's, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? The ayes have it. All right, let's go on to 7.5. To consider is authorizing a revocable license agreement with the Arizona Board of Regents on behalf of Arizona State University for Business Development Services. Sherry Wakefield, and then
7.4. We need to do
7 point,
7.4.
You passed.
I
we have
passed,
two
I passed,
Estrellas.
We have two
oh, we have
Estrellas.
2 Estrellas. Oh, I hope I didn't read the other one. Okay, so where am I? So
7.4,
do I need to start out the beginning of it?
sure.
I've lost my way again. And the next item is 7.4, to consider a preliminary plat for Estrella, parcels 7.1. Steve to present. Karesha?
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I do have a short presentation, but stop me if you have any questions. This is parcel 7.1 right here. This is Estrella Parkway, Calistoga Drive, so we're at the north of that intersection, and this is basically the main intersection into the Montecito development in Estrella. This parcel is part of the EMR parcels, Villages 7 and 9 PAD, which was approved in 2004. Surrounding this parcel, we have existing development to the north and east, proposed development to the south here in parcel 7.5, and a proposed development, a mix of residential and commercial to the east. And this just gets a little wider context now. Parcel 7.1 here This is West Star Elementary and the high school.
That's what I want to see.
And then this parcel here is just to the west of parcel 7.1. That has a large park with a lot of active amenities in that.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
You probably can't help. Whoops, would you go back to the other one, other map, please? Well, okay, thank you. The proposal we just talked about before you started, is it anywhere on this map that gives us a point of reference?
It is a couple miles north.
So it's not on there to show us, Estrella, that it's here and we're doing here and, okay. All right, that's all I wanted to know. I just wondered if it was in here because I'm familiar with this part. And I just wanted a frame of reference for the other one that we had just discussed, and I didn't ask because they didn't have a map. But I thought,
You okay now?
yep, I'm fine, thank you.
All right, go ahead, Steve.
Okay, this is the proposed subdivision configuration. We're looking at about 16 and a half acres, 71 single-family lots. It should be noted that in February 2011, the applicant did submit this pre-plat, and it did go through commission and council approval. However, they weren't ready to develop at that time. The approval expired, so they're ready again, so thus the new submittal here. 71 single-family lots, 4.3 dwelling units per acre, a little less than what the zoning would allow. They're allowed 6 to 10. They're coming a little less. Average lot size, 47 feet wide by 105 feet deep. About 4.2 acres of open space, 25% of the project. Their main open space area for the subdivision is right here within Tract J. It's more of a passive area with a ramada and picnic benches and a lawn, knowing that they have a large, significant park just to the west with a lot of active amenities, play equipment, sports courts. Staff, we did look at this. We do find the plat is consistent with the zoning. The zoning intends this to be single-family development. This plan is consistent. We conducted a technical review. We find it is consistent with our sub-regulations, our engineering design standards. Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed it January 15th. They are recommending approval. Staff is recommending approval subject to the stipulations in the staff report. With that, Mayor, presentation is concluded. Staff and applicant available for questions.
Thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Is there anyone in the audience like to speak? Well, it's gone on. Can I have a motion and a second to approve a request for the preliminary, why can I say that tonight? Preliminary plat for Estrella, partial 7.1 subdividing 16.49 acres into 71 single-family lots and 10 tracts located at the northwest corner of Estrella Parkway and, all right, how do you pronounce that? Is it
Calistoga.
What is it?
Calistoga.
Calistoga? All right. Drive within the Estrella Mountain Ranch Villages 7 and 9, planned area development subject to stipulations. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. A motion from Councilman Campbell and a motion from Councilman Campbell and a second from Councilman Stipp. Open for council discussion. Councilman Campbell.
Well, I would just like to thank Newland Communities for coming forward and developing more up in the Estrellas. We're excited to have new homes up there and welcome new members of our community, and we just want to thank them for doing that.
Great. Any other comment? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Let's go to item 7.5, to consider authorizing a revocable license agreement with Arizona Board of Regents on behalf of Arizona State University for Business Development Services. Sherry Wakefield signs to present.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. If I might have our presentation, please, for the City of Goodyear Alexandria Network Partnership. Mayor and Council, as many of you are aware, we've been negotiating with Arizona State University and working with our partner at our soon-to-be dedicated new library here in the Veneta Complex for dedication of a 1,000-square-foot incubator space within our new library. This is the logo that was adopted by the team working on the incubator space. As you know, we're part of a network. So the network of incubators throughout Phoenix today, as partners with Arizona State University, are the City of Mesa, the City of Phoenix, and the City of Scottsdale. And Phoenix named their incubator the Hive. Mesa named theirs the Think Spot. And Scottsdale named theirs the Eureka Loft. So we think we did a pretty good job getting there. So, as you all know, we're going to dedicate this space on Friday together with the community at 9 a.m. and we'll look forward to seeing you all there. So the Innovation Hub is a partnership, as we've discussed, between the ASU Entrepreneurship and Innovation Group, otherwise known in previous days as Alexandria. The partnership also exists with Maricopa County Library District, so taking an additional 1,000 square feet of the library and adding it to the project was a discussion that we had to have a bit extensively in the beginning, because what does that look like? Obviously there's the book sensors at the entry to the library, and there's the library and station, and there's the book checkout, and all those important critical things that are happening in a library. And so what does that look like to have ASU and ongoing sessions with people mentoring on site and presentation of sessions and so forth? Would it be compatible, or would it be challenging to the library? The library opened their arms to us wide and said, we would love to have this happen. In fact, we were very fortunate that Maricopa Library District gave Goodyear the first opportunity to partner on any of their libraries district-wide. We're very excited about this partnership, obviously. Tonight, we're going to consider a license agreement between Arizona State University Board of Regents and the City of Goodyear. The license agreement, as Linda did an excellent job earlier of describing, allows us some flexibility in the management and working of the space, but it's intended to help us in defining who does what to whom. And so in this case, Arizona State University provided us with a list of books that we would have and resources that we would need in the library. The county provided the actual books. So there was a question about, well, who does the logos? ASU did part of the design, and we reproduced the logos ourselves. We designed the space and put in the furniture. ASU provided us with some of the direction in terms of how the mentoring would go on. So it's been an interesting partnership, and we look forward to it growing. A big piece of what happens at the Hub is that innovators meet and co-work together. So that's their biggest buzzword is co-work space. Professionals meeting together to share ideas and innovations. It's meant to provide one-on-one mentoring space for the community, not only from the mentors here in the community, but also from the ASU SkySong Innovation Space. And it's also meant to be a resource center for business people to consider creation of new business. So if you go in and look at the collection that is there in the space today, it's everything you ever wanted to know about management and business startup and finance and human resource law and all of those good issues that come up as you're starting your own business. And we hope that the collection will grow over time as we're able to put resources towards it. Services that will occur at the Hub: workshops, webinars, streaming video. Our good friend Regis has been very busy helping us get the space put together and putting in the audiovisual equipment. We've been working with the IT team here at the city to make sure we have just the proper connections to the networks and protections for everyone that might be engaged there. There's public access through the library database and so forth to other resources that are for small business across the state and nationwide and internationally even. There's free Wi-Fi to the users in the space, and then there's a meeting room that's dedicated to the incubator for use for all these purposes that we've described. So that's a little bit about the space. I wanted you to know in your minds what you might see on Friday, but we're super excited for the unveiling and to have you all come in and walk through the space. The other really amazing part of the space is that along with our friends in Parks and Recreation, there's a community space there at the library that we'll all see on Friday that allows us to host major groups. So it could be 40, 50 folks that could come in for a business seminar and so forth. But some of the items that we expect to be entertaining in this space in terms of our delivery of curriculum, things like Fast Startup School or SBIR training, other resources that may not exist today in the West Valley at all, could be either brought in live or live streamed to the site.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Would anybody in the audience like to speak? All right, will the city clerk please read Resolution 14-1602 by title only?
Adopt Resolution 14-1602, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute a revocable license agreement with the Arizona Board of Regents on behalf of Arizona State University for business development services in the city library.
Thank you. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Stiff and a second by Councilman Holman. Open for council discussion. Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Do we have any benchmarks or outcomes that have been kind of defined so we can determine whether the program's a success or not?
Excellent question, Vice Mayor. So a very crucial piece of the initial discussion with ASU was that, in fact, we have metrics that we measure the success of the center against. And one of the things that we said, well, what does that look like? Because we have folks coming in the front door, and then we have an open entrance to the incubator. And so they do have all sorts of metrics identified for us. We have a sign-in sheet there at the space where you have to sign in to use the space. We also have a sign-up for the rooms. And then we have a checkout meter that tells us which resources are being checked out in the library. So the library is helping us measure which resources are getting used. And then we're also tracking the number of seminars that are put on. We're also tracking the number of mentoring sessions, because there also, I forgot to mention, is a dedicated office space where mentoring can go on one-on-one. Quite often with entrepreneurs or innovators, they may have an idea that wants to be patented in the future, so they need a little bit of privacy. So mentoring can go on one-on-one. But we will track all of those metrics and others which other centers have had the benefit of defining as important to the success.
We'll get, I assume, some regular updates as far as where that program is.
It would be our pleasure. In fact, what the other centers have had the pleasure of learning is that in day one, maybe you get, 10, 15 folks is what we've seen during this, soft opening period. But as word spreads and you get the seminars going, you may have to have standing room only for the center. So it goes up 60, 80 folks sometimes a week or higher. So, and the incubator will have the same hours as the library, so it's open quite a long part of the day.
No, I like the concept. I think it would be nice also as far as your matrix is. I understand the training and the meetings, et cetera, but it would also be nice to see success stories if somehow you can identify as a result of this program either a new business flourish or patent reset, something that, is a byproduct of all the effort that's gone into there. So.
It would be our great pleasure, and we're also working with the Southwest Valley Chamber to include some of the SBDC efforts that go on here at the Chamber in our seminars and so forth. So I'm sure we'll have many great stories to share in the future.
Thank you.
Councilman Osborne?
This sounds like a fabulous partnership, and I appreciate it. Actually, Mr. Pizzillo did ask about the timeliness that council will, receive some kind of feedback on how it's going, so I am interested in that. But I was not here when council met back in July discussing this. I missed this presentation, and so a couple of detailed questions I just wanted to hear about was, so it sounded from when I was reading about the agreement, the librarian, I'm assuming it says librarian will be a champion, so I'm assuming the county is on board with all of this.
They are, yeah, they're our partner with the city side of the space in terms of the dedicated space. So all sorts of discussion went on in terms of the actual square footage that we made the agreement for the county library district on the size for the library. And then we added the incubator space as a part of the city's responsibility. And the responsibility of the library district is, again, to just, maintain their hours and refer people into the space.
Okay, because it said local library staff act as champions by
They
offering
do.
advice and support, and so,
Councilmember, that's an excellent question. We conducted a training about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, and it was so important to the team at the library that they brought their entire staff, including their volunteers, and sat with us one morning and went through the entire training with us.
okay.
I can understand that, because that's the new wave, and the other libraries are, going to follow suit, I'm sure.
They're not just asking for an author.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. And my last question, it made it sound, from what I was reading, are we going to have a Goodyear staff employee that's also part of this?
Excellent point, Councilmember. I apologize. We do. So today we have Jessie Peterson, who's on our team in Development Services, who is staffing the center. She comes from a small business resource perspective. Today we have recruitment out for a small business resource person in the economic development team. And as that person comes on board, they will be the staff for the space moving forward. What they've found at other centers is that they typically need staffing maybe 2 to 3 days a week, 2 to 4 hours a day as they start to ramp up. So today we have them there about 2 hours twice a week. So 4 hours total, and that seems to be sufficient. And the other neat piece of our incubator that's a little bit unique, the others are in libraries that are standalone libraries, not part of a campus of government facilities. So there's no sort of immediate referral that can occur. In our space, we're actually able to refer folks across the parking lot to Development Services where they can get immediate assistance with their business licenses or small business mentoring or referrals to other partners in the community. So it's creating really a neat partnership.
Thank you.
Councilman Holman?
The ultimate goal of incubators is to create more jobs,
Yes.
correct? Is there any indication in the other sites that have been operating for a bit on what kind of jobs have been created?
So the Alexandria team shared some numbers with us at our training, and it was quite astounding. They think they already have between 8 and 13 patents that have resulted from the Alexandria space today. That's a very large number. And it's partially, again, you know, the metric, how does it work? A lot of the referrals come from Alexandria, and the team might end up, maybe it's in the Kaufman Innovation Space for if it's a student at a center. So in the Kaufman innovation space over at ASU, or they may end up in a rapid start program over at ASU and then make their business plan and their finance plan and then start the patent process. So there's no specific metric that would tell us, you know, X number of jobs came specifically out of Alexandria, but we know which projects started in Alexandria, and over time we'll be able to measure if they become real businesses and the number of jobs created.
Thank you.
Councilman Loretano?
I think it's absolutely wonderful. I'm very excited about this. I do have a question. How are we going to reach out to many small businessmen and women have not got to the step where they're even part of the chamber, or they're still in their garage or their kitchen table or their den? How are we going to get the word out to them that this program can help them and mentor them, and what's our plan?
Excellent question. So we do have a marketing plan in place that we're working with Alexandria, and that's part of the resource that they provide is the marketing and outreach. So in all of their programs at SkySong, they're making referrals to the innovation centers. So that's helping extensively. We also have an article in the In Focus. We'll be doing regular marketing at our front desk there at Development Services. We'll be working with the West Valley View and the Republic to get some coverage, which we've already got in place for this Friday for the grand opening, and then moving forward, some of the success stories that will happen, and working with the Chamber and the SBDCs also will have flyers and referral services there. And that's our start for now, and we'll see how it goes. The interesting thing is it's typically been more word of mouth so far at the other centers. Entrepreneurs tend to talk to other entrepreneurs, and so it just kind of grows with the success of it. But we're looking forward to that.
Georgia.
Councilman Holman?
Yes, I didn't write it down. I did have a question. Sorry.
You may remember, Vice Mayor has a question, so.
Do you envision that business advocate position that you're going out to be actively involved in doing some of the things you just mentioned?
We do. That's actually part of the job description, so excellent point, Vice Mayor. They are supposed to provide mentoring services as well as help deliver some of these courses, provide on-site referrals and so forth, so they'll be actively engaged in the Innovation Center.
Councilman Holman?
Thank you. I did remember.
See, you always get a second chance.
Thank you. My question was, this is open to Maricopa County business people, right? It's not limited to our city.
It's not even limited to Maricopa County. Just anyone who might come in and need some services is welcome to come in and visit the space and schedule some time and get some mentoring services. I think the mentoring piece of this is really one of the most dynamic. ASU has developed a database of over 3,000 mentors by subject area, and it's not something that you might just, you know, everyone has an attorney attorney or has a, maybe an intellectual property attorney they know or something of that nature. They actually have a formal structured contract relationship with these mentors that defines how the business relationship works in terms of mentoring of these potential business people. So it's a really unique resource that as we get questions, we won't have the directory available, but we inquire to our resources at ASU and then they make the connection. So.
Any other questions? All right, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Lorentano?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Holman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
All right, the next item is to consider adopting the 2014 Focus on Success Economic Development Action Plan. And the number of that was 7.6 for those listening. Sherry Wakefield, Science Development Services, again to present.
Mayor and council members, thank you for still listening this evening. So we wanted to come back to you with our Economic Development Strategic Plan. Many of you were here for the original proposal that we made in January, and a couple of requests were made at that time that I think made the plan substantially better. But I did want to recognize today, we do have some members of the Technical Advisory Panel that are in the audience, and I see Mr. Paul Smiley. Paul, thank you for being here. Mr. John Safin, and who else? Who else is here? Oh. Those are our team members that are here tonight, and Mayor Lord, of course, and our city manager, Brian Dahlke. So while we had 30-plus members of the business community and residents represented on the panel that met for about 8 months, Judy Scalise of ESI Corporation is here this evening as well. She was our facilitator for this process. We also wanted to say thank you to Arizona Public Service Company for sponsoring this for us at very low cost to the city of Goodyear. They picked up most of the expense of the consultant and the process. So very successful partnership. I just wanted to go over a couple of important points this evening with you. So there's our technical advisory panel, as we discussed. Very nice cross-section of the hospitality community, manufacturing, high-tech, finance, etc. So very importantly, we wanted to ensure that the critical elements of the plan identified those key initiatives which we do day in and day out in economic development, but also which meet the needs of the business community. So business development being a crucial piece of why we're here, creating jobs, as Councilmember Holman pointed out. Workforce, growing the workforce in the community, specifically by industry cluster and by occupation of our residents today. Employment centers, that we identified those areas of the community which we can brand and market effectively for business growth in the future. Marketing, promoting the city and promoting the city to targeted industry folks, whether it's the businesses themselves or whether it's to the brokers themselves. And I have the good fortune of saying that we did bring online today our new marketing coordinator in development services. He started today and his name is Ernie Prunker, and I'll look forward to rolling out Ernie's skills to all of us moving forward, but he's going to help us execute this plan. One of the first two initiatives he has is redoing the economic development website and redoing our marketing kit, as we're physically about to run out of marketing kits, so we can't have that happen. So we're very excited to have him on board. Two of the initiatives that we enhanced after our last discussion, one is the Small Business Initiative, and in talking with our consultants and looking further at the data that was provided in the study, we realized that first and second stage companies were really our bread and butter, if you will, from a growth perspective. The difference being that a first stage company is typically under $1 million in sales and about 1 to 10 employees. So that's your true startup that's in the garage still working on their projects, after hours. And the second group, which is really our largest opportunity for success, if you will, is in most communities, is the second stage companies. Those which are 10 to 100 employees who really are in the $1 million to $100 million range potentially. Those can be very large companies, and those are the ones which really have traction and already have partnerships and contracts and are making money and creating jobs in the community. Some of the crucial elements that are identified in the Economic Development Strategic Plan are also identified in the Council Strategic Plan and in many of our initiatives individually as our responsibilities to you as employees moving forward this year. So we're doing the quarterly business roundtables as we've done in the past. We'll be creating a year-round Shop Goodyear program, which I think is crucial. We talked about last week doing the Business Retention and Expansion program year-round as well. So we'll do a blitz, and we've had a great conversation with John Safin Chafin of Southwest Valley Chamber about that, being our partner moving forward, as is the tradition, but also being a year-round partner in that way. Developing a database of business resources. So this is so crucial. Today, you come in and you might talk to someone in development services who might refer you for a business license or might refer you to the chamber for some SBDC resources, or perhaps down to the community college for something of that nature. We wanted to have an online resource on our new website that provides access 24/7, because we know a lot of that activity goes on not during the traditional business day and in the privacy of someone's own workspace. Promoting the city's incubator and obviously leveraging the ASU connection is a huge opportunity for us that we've left untapped as yet. And so those are some of the initiatives of the small business program. Additionally, we enhanced the entertainment, tourism, and retail component of the plan, which will allow us to produce marketing materials targeted directly at the entertainment and retail sectors that were identified in our retail study with the retail coach. Update the city's website, as we've discussed. Aggressively recruit the retail and entertainment sectors, and we have the good fortune now of knowing down to the SIC code what those entertainment sector opportunities are and where the dollars can be drawn from. We will participate in the International Council of Shopping Centers conferences, and we've done that in years past. We'll continue to do so. And this year, we're going to use the retail coach to help us set the appointments and get in with those folks who were identified on our opportunities list in the retail study to get appointments while we're at the show. So I think that'll yield better results than in the past. Identify existing retailers at risk of leaving and closing. They also have a metric with the retail coach that allows us to do that. And it may not be just a Goodyear market or even a Phoenix market risk factor. It might be something that's happening nationwide that they can catch earlier and give us a heads up on, and we can work in advance of. And then collaborate with our partners at Macerich on retail growth around the mall. Focus on retail and entertainment recruitment of family-oriented businesses. Develop expansion strategies for retailers needing additional space, and that means reaching out to our retail developers and understanding when space is becoming available more early in the process, and then identifying and negotiating for the retailers on their behalf, and also matching up those retailers in advance that are looking at Goodyear with the space that become vacant. And use of tools, shall we say, for destination entertainment and redevelopment. So those are things that we've been working on over the last 2 years, which are really streamlining our development processes and taking steps out of the process and looking at more efficient rules, whether it might be signage or design guidelines, all of those elements that we can do to streamline that process and be more clear about what we expect from development. So the summary is very important. I think we did it to ourselves again, if you will. We look at bullet point number 4, and 63% of the strategies are in years 1 and 2. So we have a very aggressive plan, but we know we have very high expectations, and we also have an opportunity to hit the market just right. So 37% of those are in the 3rd and 5th year of the timeline. I made some notes that I wanted to talk to you about on that one. So I think it's important to note that we wanted to ensure that in this plan we were targeting those industries which we've identified. And those targeted industries: aerospace, healthcare, retail entertainment, higher education, all of those different high-tech manufacturing components. Those are our targeted industries. That we had a very aggressive business retention and expansion program that went year-round. That we created the red teams, as we discussed with the team that was on our technical advisory committee. Red teams, as most of you are probably familiar, are those folks in the community who we've trained in advance to be resources with us in the recruitment process. So if we get a large user that would come into the market, they can be our advertorial to their experience of doing business in the community, and they're trained up on all the incentives and all the important bullet points that we want to get across to our future locates. So it's a very crucial piece, and we'll be implementing that in the very first year. And in fact, we've reached out to those members who offered to help us already to start with the spring training game, and we'll start with the indoctrination there and then move them forward to some formal training. And the other initiatives that we want to do in this first year is the West Valley Workforce Study. We've talked with the Greater Phoenix Economic Council and with Westmark about doing that study, and we're looking for some resources to put towards that, and through our partners, not through council. And so we're very excited about that, because one thing that we noted in the data was that we need to more effectively communicate those resources which are here in the West Valley to employers that aren't just the typical, perhaps, distribution or transportation type employers. And then the last piece is, of course, our small business opportunities and our small business program. So very important initiatives. All of these initiatives fit in line with the council's strategic plan. Of course, elements of fiscal and resource management, economic vitality, sense of community, and quality of life. That's what I have to
Great,
say.
thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? And I see the hand raised high. Mr. Smiley, please come forward. It's nice to see you again. It's always positive when you come before the microphone.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Paul Smiley, resident of Goodyear, retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, and a small business owner here in the city of Goodyear. Council, I can tell you as part of the TAC team, you should be very proud of Sherry and Harry, the folks on the staff here. It was very comprehensive. We use that term a lot, but I can tell you there were a lot of gnashing of teeth, but Sherry and Harry and the entire staff, and also the consultant, did a great job putting this plan together. One thing that I'm really concerned about, however, is that if you saw today's news, Secretary Hagel of the Defense announced major budget cuts today in terms of personnel. I think we all can agree that veterans and their families make a huge part of our community. They do great work. And what I see happening here is we need to be prepared as a city to embrace those veterans and their families as they depart from active duty or retire. I was on an airplane coming from Dayton, Ohio this past Saturday, and I was sitting next to a gentleman who was 80 years old, retired Army colonel, and his wife, and they were moving to Pebble Creek. And I asked the question, how did you get Pebble Creek? He said, we love the community there. It was so friendly. Goodyear was such a great place. So another testament, people are coming back. However, I would say, as a small business owner who is about to crack the 100 employee code, we have 72% of our employees are veterans. And we focus on them because they do great work and they're great talented people. But what happens is when you look for right fit talent, I had Mayor Laura out at Luke Air Force Base going to a transition program, which is mandatory by DOD. So the question is, how do we maintain and keep those veterans in our community when they're either retiring or their job has been eliminated from the Department of Defense? I would like the City of Goodyear to consider developing a Veterans Advisory Committee made up of citizens. There are a lot of initiatives that out there that happen in the veterans community that are just, it's just mind-boggling. Perfect example. Last year, my company, we received a $39,000 tax credit for hiring veterans, about $4,000 per veteran. That tax credit could have went to any business owner in the city of Goodyear. And so there's a difference between a tax credit and a tax deduction. So when you find out these type things, you say, wow, how did I miss that? Because there's just so much information out there. So I would like the city to consider, again, a Veterans Advisory Committee that will focus on transition services and also business development. There's a House bill right now down at the Arizona Legislature, 2475, that will set aside 3% of all state of Arizona contracts for veteran-owned businesses that are based here in the state of Arizona. So instead of sending those tax dollars and contracts to Nevada and California, those tax dollars will stay here. So again, I would ask the council to come up with a Veterans Advisory Committee made of veterans so we can give you feedback and let you know what's happening. There are a lot of great things happening. And finally, my last point is, if you haven't heard, Estrella Mountain Community College opened up their Veterans Center this past September, focused on education and also focusing on jobs. So we want those veterans to retire and stay here, keep their dollars here, because I think we all know, I know the folks on the panel who are from veteran families, that it is just it's just something we have to have. We cannot afford to let that talent and also the good citizenry walk away from our town. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Smiley. Would the city clerk please read Resolution 14-1598 by title only, please?
Adopt Resolution 14-1598, approving the Focus on Success Economic Development Action Plan.
Thank you. Could I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Holman and a second by Councilman Osborne. Open for council discussion. Councilman Campbell.
Thank you. Sherry, this is so exciting, and I really want to thank the community that stepped up as our stakeholders. It's such an important partnership that we have now forged that we want to keep working with them as we move forward. And this is very aggressive, I understand that, but it's something that is needed, and we're very excited about it. I'm especially excited about your Shop Goodyear tour or your campaign. I am on Leadership West, or I am a Leadership West in Class 20, and our project is Shop, Give, and Serve. And we are advocating to everyone in the West Valley to shop local, give local, and serve local. And we just are so excited with your campaign, and we're tied in with Local First. We're also tied in with Chamber for Good, and we will advocate on your behalf, of course. I'm always advocating Shop Goodyear first. In fact, someone mentioned to me just the other day that they were going to Scottsdale, and I said, why? Everything you want is in Goodyear. All you and it costs too much to drive to Scottsdale. So thank you so much, and I'm excited about it, and I hope that you will keep us apprised of how it is working, and anything we can do to help advocate or to make it go forward, we're willing to help all we can.
Thank you so much,
More
Councilman.
comments? Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
I also agree. This is really important to grow our base and to our success for this community. This is going to make or break. And as a result of that, we really appreciate maybe quarterly on how this program is working, coming back and giving us an update.
We'll do that. Thank you for the opportunity.
Councilman Osborne?
Well, thank you, Sherry. Actually, I guess we kind of consider this Focus Future 3, and I was Focus Future 2 back in, I don't know, 2001 or something, way back then. And you know, the desire for business and our image and all of that has not changed, just gotten better, and I'm excited to see us work harder on this. You know, something that we all have really known about, and more that these studies are really keying into us, is that our citizens that live here don't work here. And we've got to change that. And for Goodyear to be a livable city, they have to be able to live, play, and work here. And, you know, and over time, if we don't change that, it's going to wane on our citizens. They're going to get tired of that commute, and they're going to get tired. We've been on that freeway heading downtown. They're going to get tired of that. And so, you know, it's really, I think, behooves us, a Gary word, it behooves us to work hard on this, and I appreciate that. Something that, you know, it's funny, I was going to wait till the end, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you now, something that has come up, and as we talk about retention and expansion and new businesses coming in, but just recently I had a discussion with Randy, our new I'm sorry.
Inspection supervisor.
Inspection, thank you. Well, anyway, the reason I was talking to him was because I've had some businesses say to me, did you know, and because we've gone to the new code, 2012 codes, that there are things in place that businesses don't realize they have to have. And one silly prime example is a water cooler. And who would have thought, especially for a tenant improvement or for a new business that's, you know, going to build a new store or something, they have no idea that there's these things now that's, you know, important. And so I thought that, especially as you look at these plans, having some little checklist or something ahead of time to businesses that are thinking about expanding or thinking about doing improvements, of saying, you know what, did you know you're going to have a bathroom now because you have this many people coming to your place? You know, there's just certain things that businesses don't have really a thought about, and I never in a million years would have, I mean, I have water bottles for customers, but I never would have thought I was supposed to have a water cooler for something like that. But so those are simple little things that really, I think, can make a difference for a business. So I just wanted to let you know about that. And, you know, some of the things I know you looked at, we looked obviously at healthcare, and we looked at higher education, and those are two very important things. And something that the mayor and I have discussed, and I believe we have a real good opportunity in front of us, is a West MEC here in Goodyear that's in the healthcare industry. Getting that pipeline going with our students for that trade in healthcare will really help, you know, solidify some of that as we go forward. So I just thank you for this presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joanne. Councilman Stipp.
I appreciate all of it. And obviously in its totality, it's really important. I was really taken to task within the last 10 days or so about our lack of things to do by a young family. And I know we've all expressed that concern, and as much as I would love to see us be an employment center, we cannot keep families here if there's nothing for them to do. So again, I just want to share, I'm not going to share the beating that I took, but at least share the information that.
Why shouldn't you take it? The rest of us.
I took it, but I'm not sharing it. But in any event, if, I know it's in the plan, and I know it's as we try to move forward, but we've got to balance it all out. So I appreciate the effort and the fact that it's in there, and now get to work, I guess.
Councilman Holman.
I just wanted to make a comment to thank Arizona Public Service, because Joanne, while you were appalled with the thought you did Focus Future 2, I did Focus Future 1 and Focus Future 2. So, but I think it's great that APS evolves these for the communities all over the state, and that we have been a recipient of it. I believe we're one of the first to do this particular effort, and I think they need a public thank you for their continued interest in the development, economic development of their city. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you for mentioning that. Any other? Well, I just want to thank you. You know, how long has it been since I was in Chandler, made that speech about this very subject, and came back and said, you know, we've got to start doing this. And it's really nice to see that we're actually going to do it. So I'm very excited. But I want to make sure that all the people that attended Focus on Success know how much we appreciate. These were people who have busy schedules and high-powered jobs, and they took the time to come here and help us with that. So I'll be ever grateful. And then on Mr. Smiley, you're absolutely right. You and I have talked about the veterans, and we've tried several ways. And unfortunately, I failed you so far. But I do think on a citizen committee that is easily attainable. The next steps are not so easy attainable, but we'll work on them. And I did. We today got a private briefing from Luke Forward on what's going to happen with the military before Hagel actually spoke on the radio. So it was sad to hear that the number of soldiers we're going back to is back to, what would you say, World War II? You know, I mean, that's how much they're eliminating from the military, and so we're going to have all these people on the street, and unexpectedly. So we all of our cities need to come together and try to help out. So I appreciate you bringing that up today. I had all kinds of thoughts after this meeting to hit staff with. But city manager was with me, and it was sort of shocking. But I have to tell you, compared to some other cities, we still have our Luke Air Force Base, and that's going to be even more meaningful as time goes on. So, thank you what you've done on that. You sort of, I can check that one off my list now, and so I appreciate it. Okay, all right. So roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Holman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. The next item is 7.7, to consider in adopting the land use assumptions and infrastructure improvement plans and setting public hearing date for an adoption of the proposed development fees. Larry Lang, you are the presenter. I see you before me. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you here this evening on this. What I'd like to do before I get started is recognize people that we have with us. We have Dwayne Guthrie, the consultant from Tischler Bice, is here in case you have any questions on the report. Tracy DeSoma, who is our in-house development impact fee expert and coordinator, is here this evening, as well as Kim Bradford, who has been a key part of this as the interim budget manager, are here. and a number of the staff that have been involved with from all of the departments that had to put together the information that is included in this report before you tonight. Thought what I would do, I'm not going to go through this schedule in depth, but probably the first thought you all had as I was walking up is, he's back, because we've been discussing this for quite some time. And so the presentation I'm doing this evening is not going to be redundant for the past, 4 presentations you've had in the last 6 to 8 weeks. We'll try to just keep it really at a pretty high level. And, but the really good news is we'll be back for more. As you can see, we have another public hearing March 31st, and then another action item for the council on May 12th. And all of this, for the benefit of those at home or just seeing for the first time, is a result of changes in the Arizona legislation on development impact fees, and the process that takes, the adoption process that takes approximately 225 days, and we're closing in on the end of that to have these effective August 1st, 2014, which is a requirement of the statutes. So the action that we're asking for this evening is to adopt resolution number 14-1599, which will adopt the land use assumptions and infrastructure improvements plan. It'll also adopt the policy statement relating to the use of excess sales tax from the construction sales tax. And then also we're asking you to set March 31st as the date for the public hearing on the proposed development fees. On the land use assumptions and infrastructure improvement plans, this is something that has been changing as we've gone through. We're going to ask you to make, as part of that, a couple of final adjustments. We want to reduce the project cost on project number W113 to $2,078,000. That is a project that had several costs in there, and apparently some duplicated costs were in as part of that project. Also in the southern area, we want to eliminate project number 3, which is approximately $4.7 million. That is a duplicate with project 2. One says that it's evaporation ponds, and the other says that it's brine beds, but they're both serving the same functional purpose. That can be done just as part of the motion. I read that in, what those changes were so that the clerk would have them do that. But our recommendation is to accept the land use assumptions and IIP report as of February 24th, which is today, and that will be revisions that the consultant will have included in that report.
Thank you, Larry.
If I could just
Yes,
real
go ahead.
briefly,
All right.
we wanted to go through the whole process of where we've been and to show what the calculation of the fees are in each of the areas. And rather than go through each of the subcomponents, I refer you to the bottom half of this chart, which shows in the north, the central, and the south areas. From our conversations, because this journey really has been more than the last 200 days, this journey goes back to 2011 when we made our first adjustment to these impact fees. And so it was a request from a member of the council to include that column for the pre-Senate Bill 1525 fees, since that was all part of how we've evolved. So that's what's different on this schedule than what you've seen before. These fee calculations are estimates that are done at this point in time, and they will be revised slightly for the modifications I've asked you to include. This one, I apologize, it's a little harder to read, but that's the impacts on the commercial development, and that is by area. We chose commercial. There are several categories. There's industrial, there's office, but we chose commercial because it tends to have a higher profile. This schedule, I have to tell you, is different than the schedule that we gave you this previously. in that when I was asked a question today, Councilmember Osborne, I hope you don't mind, I mention you on this, but Councilmember Osborne came in to discuss this with me today, and it became real obvious that our calculation on the fees was wrong in the first column. In the report that you got, or the presentation that you were sent, you'll notice that first column has some very low numbers in there. What happened is that those fees were calculated on a different basis. They used a different square footage. Our old structure was much more complex. It was a different fee for offices from 10,000 to 50,000 and 50 and higher. So took different selections than what we normally used. And of course, we had to mix those together to be consistent with this report. But the second thing it did was it went per 10,000 square feet instead of per 1,000 square feet. So in the chart that I gave you that was part of your drop, it showed those costs to be considerably lower in that previous column. We did not increase the fees dramatically in 2012, we decreased them. And this chart more accurately reflects what happened. You've asked along the way, what are other communities doing on these impact fees, and understanding that all of the fees around the state that are going to be in place are running a parallel schedule to us, roughly parallel, and because they've got to be in place by August 1st of 2014, or you cannot adopt different fees. So Friday, our staff, while I was at a conference in Prescott, going to a session on impact fees, our staff was actually putting this together and checked our neighboring communities from their websites. For those areas that have multiple fees, we took the middle fee. Didn't try to interpret where it was and so forth. So you'll notice on this one's a commercial fee comparison. Okay, yeah, on the commercial fee, you'll notice in Goodyear we're using the central. That's because it's the middle of the three fee zones that we have as far as in amount. So what this shows is the current fee, which is only the fee that's being charged from 2012 up until August 1st of 2014, and the proposed fee for Goodyear, Avondale, Buckeye, Glendale, Peoria, and Surprise. You'll notice Surprise does not have any fees in that category. The statutes don't require you to calculate fees at the time you adopt the land use and IIP assumptions. Our consultant did, and quite frankly, I think it'd be very hard to have this conversation, adopt this without you knowing what the impact was.
Right, Larry,
But
thank
that's
you.
what they're doing in Surprise, so we don't know what those fees are going to be. And it's our understanding that they're looking at a number of different options at this point, so I really can't answer what's going to happen in Surprise. We did a similar comparison on the housing. I will have to send that to you. I apologize, I didn't include that in here for single-family housing units.
Can we interrupt you a moment?
Yes,
Joe has
please.
a question on this chart.
Chart that you're showing here, right here, Larry. Is it fair to say, I know you had different categories, whatever, but I'm looking at it, that the current fees versus the proposed with 30 to 40% increase, commercial?
In
Central area?
commercial, our current, in the central area is about $600 on that. That'd be about a 30% increase from the current fee. But that was part of the discussion, I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. That was part of the discussion of why we added this column for the pre-Senate Bill 1525 fee. Because if you look at that point in time in the central zone, I guess that was a little bit higher in that particular column because of the street fee at that point.
Right, but I was kind of looking at what they're paying now
Yes.
versus what they're going to pay. It's between 30, 40%, somewhere in for there. When you look at the $717 increase off of a 1930, so.
Yeah.
And that's apples to apples then, correct?
That is apples to apples. What we did not include in this chart is water and sewer. The reason we didn't include it is when we tried to make these comparisons by community, you have a real issue. Normally, it's done by water meter size. So that business that has a water cooler and a restroom will use a lot less water than a business that has more water usage in it and different water meter sizes. So, and some of the communities didn't have that comparable information.
Thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. So what changes did we make through January 13th? We've just accumulated them all here. We've gone through these. I'm not going to go through this list again unless you'd like to see them. But I think you've heard them 3 or 4 times each by now. And so this is just kind of putting them all in one place as a reminder of what's changed since the original report that you had the public hearing on. The impacts of all of these were to reduce fees and to assist us in implementation, meeting administrative requirements, as well as meeting our ability to operate these facilities once we had them, which is a great concern. So with that, I would ask you tonight to adopt a resolution with the modifications that I discussed, and also to schedule the public hearing. But I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Would anybody from the audience like to speak? Will the city clerk please read Resolution 14-1599 by title only?
Adopt Resolution 14-1599, adopting the Land Use Assumptions and Infrastructure Improvements Plan, IIP, adopting a policy statement relating to the use of excess sales tax from construction sales tax, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Could I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved. Second.
All right, with this, on this side, Councilman Loretano made the motion, and on this side, there were a couple of you, so raise your hand. Thank you. Councilman Holman has the second. Open for council discussion. No discussion. Oh, all right. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Homan?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
All right, let's go to the number 2. Can I have a motion and a second to set March 31st, 2014 as the date for the public hearing on adoption of the proposed development fees? I hear a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Osborne and a second by Vice Mayor Pizzillo. Open for council discussion. All right, no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay,
Thank you very
Mayor.
much, Larry. I do want to go, before we go on to the next one, I do want to thank Wayne, Guthrie, and Kim and Tracy for all the work you've done. Thank you so much. All right, so now we're ready for the next item. The last item on the business is to receive the second quarter financial report and approve the second quarter budget transfers for the fiscal year of 2013-14. Kim Bradford, Interim Budget and Research Manager, to present. You have a different hat on tonight. It's nice to see you, Kim.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you this evening regarding the second quarter financial update. Request your approval on the second quarter budget transfers, and then also brief you on an update for the 5-year forecast as we get into next year's budget development process. I thought before we got into the actual discussion regarding the second quarter report, I would show you where tonight's meeting fits into the overall budget development process. So you'll see highlighted in red on the screen tonight's meeting. The mid-year update and the 5-year forecast is really kind of at the beginning stages of our budget development process as we look to fiscal year 15's budget development. And then you'll see we have quite a bit of activity ahead of us over the next couple months as we get into our budget discussions. So this evening, I will be presenting some highlights of the second quarter financial report. There is a full report that was written up that goes into much detail and provides specifics regarding many of the elements that I'll be discussing this evening. That was provided in your council packet and also posted online. So if I don't cover something that you have a question on, please just let me know. In the presentation, I will give a review of the general fund, major revenues and expenditures, sneak preview right there. highlight the budget trends that we are seeing through the second quarter, review our other operating funds, which relate to the highway user revenue funds, our HERF funds, and then also our enterprise funds, the water, wastewater, and stadium. I'll also provide a brief overview of the budget transfers that did occur during the second quarter, and again, that's the official council action this evening, is to request your approval. And then we will move to the 5-year forecast to give you an update on what that looks like, update from the retreat discussion that was held in November, and where we go from here. So on this slide here, you'll see a summary of the general fund, both the revenues and expenditures through the second quarter. Overall, our revenues are coming in very strong. We are at 112% for our ongoing revenue, and then our one-time construction sales tax is at 144%. Generally, overall, looking at the combination of both the one-time and the ongoing, we're at about 115% of where we anticipated through the second quarter, which goes through December 2013. Regarding our expenditures, you'll see, I just want to explain the chart a little bit. The very first column on the bottom is our adopted budget, and then the next green column is our amended budget, and the difference that you'll see there are the transfers that are approved throughout the fiscal year that make adjustments from our adopted operating budget to the activity that's taking place during the fiscal year. So for example, if we have funds that are adopted in our one-time budget, they are not traditionally seen in our ongoing operating revenue, but if we do a transfer to move them, that accounts for the difference. However, it's important to note that our overall adopted budget, the $205 million that council adopted, does not change, and that does not impact it. We're still within those anticipated levels. So overall, for the expenditures, you'll see for the categories, we are at 43%. This is very much in line with where we have trended in the past. Last year at the second quarter time frame, we were at 44%. And even going back 3 years, we're basically within 1% or 2%. So we're trending exactly where we would anticipate. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in both those categories here. So for our general fund revenue, the table on the slide shows the breakdown of the different categories of revenue that make up our general fund. They're all listed there, and again, as you can see, they're coming in right where we would anticipate. We're coming in very strong in our development-related revenues. That's something that we monitor very closely. As you know, we give updates on our permits and where those are coming in every month. We send those out as we get them. That's one revenue source that's really impacted by the amount of growth that we see going on in the community. And we also tend to see some corresponding expenditures that go along with that utilize that revenue. So while we report to the council quarterly on that, we do monitor that very closely every month and work very closely with the development-related departments on that. Overall, we are at 112% through the second quarter. Oh, and I did want to note, on the development-related revenue, we have seen that trending very strong. For the first quarter, I went back and looked to see where we were at, and we were at 216% of our revenue expenditures our revenue estimates for the first quarter. So you'll see it's kind of shaking out a little bit, and at the end of last fiscal year, we came in at 155%. So very consistent, again, with where we've seen that historically and with last fiscal year. Also on the construction sales tax, which is our one-time revenue, you'll see that that's at 144%. Again, that's another revenue source that is really volatile depending on the activity that's going on in the community and the various projects. And so we do factor in an element of conservatism when we budget in there, and then again adjust as those revenues come in. So overall, our revenues, again, as I mentioned, are at 115% through December 2013. In regards to the general fund expenditures, overall we are at 43%, as I mentioned, very consistent with where we would expect to see them. We did want to point out the operating capital is a new category that you'll see, and I think you saw it in the first quarter report. That category reflects one-time supplementals that were awarded to the departments, adopted as part of the budget, but they are not part of their ongoing base budget, and so they're one-time funds that relate to specific projects or contracts that may have been anticipated during this fiscal year, and I'll give a report on that as we go through the detail, but that was also included in the report. But again, very much in line with where we anticipate to be through December. So in summary, regarding the general fund, again, our revenues are very stable, very much in line with where we anticipate them to be. We are not seeing any trends that cause any concern or emerging issues. We continue to monitor those closely. We'll provide the quarterly updates to council, but we do review those revenues and expenditures every month, make sure there's nothing, no emerging trends that we may need to address. Our spending is in line with our historical and right where we anticipate it would be, 43% through the second quarter. And then we also have conducted our quarterly meetings with departments. So while we report out quarterly to the council, we're also conducting in-depth meetings every quarter with each department, with all of their operational staff, as well as the finance manager, the deputies, and budget staff, to really delve into programs, what's driving some increased cost. We need to monitor things, so that in-depth level of detail is also taking place in the day-to-day work. Moving on to our other funds, as I mentioned, that includes our Highway User Revenue Fund, which is commonly referred to as our HERF fund, and then also water, wastewater, and sanitation. I just want to point out on this, again, we're seeing kind of where we would expect. You will note that water and wastewater, water is a little bit below and wastewater is higher than where we would anticipate through the second quarter. When we were contemplating the budget estimates and where we would think the revenue would come in as we were establishing the budget for this fiscal year, both those categories were experiencing rate adjustments. And so without some historical trend on what we would expect or any fluctuations based on that, we kind of, estimate our best guess. And again, anticipate a level of conservatism in there. We don't want to project we'll be bringing in more revenue, budget to that, and then come up short. So you'll see that underlying through that.
You want to stop her now? Kim, Vice Mayor Pizzillo has a question.
I appreciate it. We've had a discussion today. I had several questions on this, and so far we've covered all those issues. The one thing that just still concerns me on wastewater is I appreciate going through the rate adjustments or rate things but if we continue to run at this pace, we may want to take a closer look of what we're charging for sewer. So, just a thought.
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor Pizzillo. And one thing we also monitor again is kind of, as we mentioned with the development, as we see increase in demand and so increased revenues, there may be offsetting operational. So definitely a balance that we maintain there. Thank you.
Can we do this for a discussion time, or is it something that's on the chart there?
Well, what I'm worried about is we're going to be so far down with so many slides that
Okay,
we're going to
go
have
ahead.
to go
All right, go
farther
right ahead.
back.
All
And
right.
I didn't stop earlier.
Good point.
But Kim, you just mentioned, and it's not a question, it's more of a statement for anyone listening to this. You talked about development-related fees and how they're up, I think it was 144% or something. It was a number of slides back, I don't need you to go back, but I think it was pretty substantial. 189%. And I think it's important to point out that the development-related revenues are considered one-time only, correct?
Well, we budget them and are ongoing, but you are correct as far as that it's isolated to a specific project or permit fee, right?
So someone looking at this from home, and this is where my statement comes from, is they look at that and say, look, we're bringing in so much more, can't we reduce our taxes, can't we? And this is really one-time money, either dedicated specifically for a project, or if it is additional, it is only one time. So we don't put it into our budget, and I think that it's important to.
That's a good point.
I think she needs to clarify that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Stipp and Mayor. We do have a base budget that we budget as far as our ongoing operating expenditures. And again, I think the important element there is that we maintain a conservative approach, knowing that because of the level of activity, that's going to drive the level of revenues that we see. So while it's an ongoing expenditure and a base budget item, we definitely do not budget anticipating a continued level of 189%. So there's definitely a balance there. But you're right, it's not ongoing in our base at 189%.
Yeah, and I think that it's important for us to note for the general fund discussion in its entirety, that even though we trended pretty high last year, we're trending pretty high right now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we've got a new source of revenue. And I think that's what I'm trying to express.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I agree.
In regards to our expenditures for our other funds, the HERF and our enterprise funds, we are trending where we would anticipate. You may look at this and think we are halfway through the fiscal year, and so I would expect to see 50% levels. But it's important to note there's a couple drivers that make these percentages come in lower. HERF, the main driver is that a large percentage of those funds are dedicated for street overlay projects, which take place in the spring. And again, very much in line with where we were last year. We were at 30% at this point last fiscal year, so very much in line with our historical trends. And then also with the utility funds, that a lot of times we have operational expenditures that are related to repairs and maintenance that require procurement lead time and so forth. And so very normal to see these at below 50%, and then they catch up as the fiscal year progresses. Regarding the supplementals, as I mentioned, we have a category this fiscal year that we're calling operating capital. And what that is it reflects the supplementals that were approved in the budget process, but were not added to departmental base budgets. So they're one-time funds that they're using for either certain contracts that would take place this fiscal year, special projects, something like that. And so we don't anticipate those to be recurring, so we didn't want to add that to their base budget overall. As part of the report, we listed out all the one-time supplementals that were approved. We had $4.4 million in general fund, $650,000 in wastewater, and $315,000 in water. There's a detailed listing of all the supplementals that were approved and the amounts and then the status. I thought I would just take a moment to highlight a couple of those so you could put in context of what those supplementals were for. But certainly if you have questions about any of them as we move forward, I can answer those for you. The website update, a key project and initiative of the communications office and in line with our city strategic action plan. That is on track for a soft launch in April, and I know you've been hearing updates on that. Our audiovisual equipment upgrade, we've been experiencing that this evening. That was installed mid-February. And
Yes, we certainly have been experiencing that.
So that the expenditure for the purchase of that equipment was a one-time supplemental that was approved, and we have expended that. The police impound yard, we had one-time funds that were allocated for some improvements for the facility that they will be taking over. When the fleet operations move out and move to their new facility, there will be some renovations to the existing fleet facility to use that as our impound yard. So there's some one-time funds allocated for that. And again, kind of shows some differential in the status of how quickly things may or may not be moving forward. The first couple in progress moving forward, but police impound yard has some dependencies before they can actually expend those funds. We had approval for public safety software and equipment, which also includes new world system upgrades. Those are in progress right now. PD working with our IT department to get those implemented. Economic development initiatives, you've heard about a number of those that were one-time supplementals this evening, including the Economic Development Strategic Plan and the retail demographic study. So those were both one-time supplementals that were approved, and obviously those are moving forward. The other element to that is funding that was for marketing strategies. So now that we have those plans, the blessing from the council and the direction, now economic development has those one-time funds that will help move those to the implementation phase. We also had funding for parks, and that includes not only sidewalk improvements, which is shown there, but includes plant and tree replacement, and also what we call rolling fleet replacements. And so it's the smaller equipment that's used both at the ballpark and the parks department that required replacement. So those were supplementals that are in progress as we speak. Those are pretty large, and that accounts for why you see such a low percentage of expenditure through the second quarter, as those are items that require some lead time in procurement. So the equipment replacement, the list of what needs to be replaced this fiscal year and when was developed, and now they're under the procurement process. So we will see in the next quarter that percentage come up. Also in regards to the sidewalk improvements and the plant and tree replacement, part of the process after that supplemental was approved was to go through and for parks to identify all those specific locations, which they're in the process of doing before they expend those funds. So they do anticipate working through those this fiscal year. In regards to the budget transfers, again, this is the official council action this evening. Just a note about the budget adjustments. What these are necessary for is to facilitate the transfer of funds between departments from where they were originally adopted, or in the case of grants or funds that were not originally part of our budgeted revenue, to facilitate bringing those into the city and allocating them where they're going to be spent. As I mentioned, that's part of what you'll see when you see an adopted budget versus the amended budget, largely due to some of those budget transfers that we do and review with the council throughout the fiscal year. There is a full report in the second quarter report that lists out every budget transfer that was done. I thought I would highlight just a couple of them, especially some that are notable in dollar size, just to give some context of what they are actually facilitating. Again, I can answer any questions about specifics that I don't cover. The largest one that you'll see in that report is for about $4 million. And what that is actually the reconciliation of our capital improvement plan project carryovers to the actual budgeted amounts that were realized by the beginning of the fiscal year. In order to adopt the budget, we have a cutoff in about April-May timeframe where we estimate what do we think we'll need to carry over in terms of our capital projects, so we can have an amount that's included in your adopted budget. Of course, the projects don't stop between April and July, and so there's still expenditures and adjustments taking place, sometimes more than what we thought and sometimes less. So the budget transfer that you see as part of this report is the actual reconciliation once we went through and reviewed all the projects, the funding that they had, what we anticipated was carried over to what they actually needed carried over, and then reconciling those numbers, so that makes up the majority of that $4 million. We also have some transfers that facilitate grants. We had the CDBG grant that was awarded, and so we have to conduct a budget transfer to receive that and allocate that expenditure within our budget. We also had a couple of grants that related to public safety, some UASI emergency management grant equipment purchase. And then the other that we see are insurance reimbursements. So for example, we had some storm damage both at the community park and out at the ballpark when we had storms this past winter. We received insurance reimbursements from that, and then the budget transfer will facilitate putting those back into our operating budget.
Bill? Councilman Stipp?
Do you want, question on the transfers now?
Am
Or do
I
you wanna wait?
permitted to
I think it's better.
Can we?
have
Tell me,
transfers?
it doesn't matter?
Okay.
All right.
Good, yes, yes.
Okay, I'm going to admit right off the bat, I was late getting out the door on the packet, so I could have called and got this earlier today.
No problem.
And I don't know that an answer right this very second is necessary. Page 22, transfer number 140046. I figured this would be the easiest way to do it.
Yep, got it.
I think that's the engineering one.
Right.
That's probably a follow-up on the manager's side, is my guess. That just seemed like an unusual.
What it was is we received an invoice. We had closed out the project, and by doing so, did not have any other funds allocated. We received an invoice, and so in order to actually pay, we had to do the budget transfer to put the funds associated with that project. So sometimes what you'll see on the budget transfers is if we're changing the project number, you will see those transfers show up. But it was a budget transfer that was in line with an invoice that we had anticipated, but the project number had been closed out, and so in order to put those funds back into pay.
So we closed it too early before the,
Right.
okay. And then the other one is page 27, 14006, 140062. And that was a long list of employee-related transfers.
Right. What was happening, Councilmember Stipp, is that upon reviewing the budget for economic development, and they've been undergoing some structural change. Of programs. And so budget transfers were done. No additional funding was provided, but it was just a reallocation to put it in the appropriate division to match the restructure.
And if I remember that correctly, we had a position somewhere else that we moved into there? Is that occurred in the fall last year? I think there was a vacancy elsewhere in the city that got moved into development services.
Correct.
Okay. Correct. All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo has a question, please.
And again, we talked about,
Back to.
we talked about this before, but what would be helpful under the contingency fund transfers, there are some contingencies in which have actual dollar amounts in them, and there are some contingency funds that are a holding spot in case money comes with it, like your insurance payment, where it's used. So from an appropriation standpoint, you have the ability to pay. It would be nice in the description if somewhere you mention that, because if it's dollars coming out of the emergency fund or a contingency that is funded, then that has different questions than if there's revenue that's coming in and you're just creating an appropriation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it just would help in the description if you do that. That way I would know, because I don't remember the accounts anymore and don't want to remember the accounts anymore. All I want to know is whether there was money budgeted that is coming out of the emergency fund or it's coming as a result of an insurance reimbursement or something.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Pizzillo. We will include that in future
Okay,
reports.
thank you.
Thank you. Moving to the 5-year financial forecast. This is something that was discussed with the City Council at the retreat in November. And when we discussed it then, wanted to make sure that we brought that back, and we mentioned that we would bring it back early in 2014 to make sure that no conditions had significantly changed from when you made policy decisions at that time. And before it was April, and we were going in-depth into some revenue projections. So just wanted to update the 5-year forecast with you. As you know, you received a pretty in-depth report at the retreat from Mike Letcher on the economic conditions, some of the variables, the positive indicators that we were seeing, and also some of the unknowns that we were still experiencing, such as sequestration, the state's fiscal condition, and legislative session that was coming up, and what that might bring as far as impact to the city. And none of the conditions that we talked about at the retreat have changed significantly. And so the council direction, and I wanted to reiterate it here as far as what we discussed at the November retreat, and those are the assumptions that we're using to build this model, and what you'll also see as we get into specific revenue projections for fiscal year 15. So our direction that was received is we are going to maintain the tax policies as they are today. That includes maintaining a floating property tax rate that allows us to collect the levy that meets our obligations, and also maintaining that 3-month reserve policy to make sure that we can cover our operating funds should an emergency arise. This slide is also similar to...
Councilman Stipp has a question.
Yes, thank you.
On that particular slide, Kim, is we all just got our tax estimate this weekend, and I was surprised to see that the values had increased as much as they had. Was that anticipated? And is that going to affect our floating rate? We kind of looked at and said it was going to be $1.90, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. Will that have an impact on this as we push into the budget season?
Yeah, sorry, I just elbowed Kim away on this one, but this is an area that Anna Dezak from our office and I work on more closely, so I'll answer that. The estimates were better than our projections by a little bit. They were fairly close, but a little bit better. When we talked at the retreat, I think we had a chart up that we expected the property tax rate, I'm talking the rate, not the levy, but
Right, the rate.
that's the byproduct of what this policy is. To meet this policy, we expected it to be $1.90. Our current estimate is that it'll be $1.87. And so the levy didn't change, the rate dropped because of that valuation. That's exactly what that floating rate is talking about.
Right, so we're not going to come back at $1.90, we're going to come back at $1.87.
That is correct.
That's perfect, thank you.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Just while you're there real quick, I got mine too, and it looks like in 2005, everything starts to level off because the most you can go up is what, 5% a year in the valuation?
2015, you mean?
Is it 15?
Yeah.
Was the 15 one that I saw, is that for not this coming budget year, but the following one?
That's correct. What you got just in the mail, we all got it last week. What you got in the mail is the 2015 tax year notice of year valuation. A few things that were interesting on it were, one is that you look at it and you try to link it to the budget we're going into. No. That's the fiscal year 15-16 budget. The second thing, if you noticed in there that was interesting is it did not show a secondary assessed valuation for 2015. The voters have made a change, and that'll be the first year of that change where there's just one limit. And so it'll be very interesting to see how all of that plays out, and we've worked that into our estimates for this next year.
I imagine that's going to have an impact because it kind of maximizes what that increase can be now.
That's correct. The increase on each of our houses is limited to 5% next year. And that will have an impact, and it's an intended impact.
Right.
My house increased in value by about 35%. In the past, when that happens, overall for Goodyear, I saw some information that Anna downloaded for me. Overall for Goodyear, residential went up, I believe it was about 20% for the year. The impact of that is that it used to be that it would jump up that dramatically, but then we also saw that things would level out, and that's what happened during the Great Recession when the prices dropped. It took a while for it to catch up. Now it'll just be kind of a slow, steady curve that'll be recognized.
Thank you, Larry.
All set? Go ahead, Kim.
So just a little bit about the five-year forecast. As I mentioned, this chart looks very similar to what you saw in the retreat. For fiscal year 15, we were at 76 million. Right now, our estimates are at 79.2. So again, very much in line with where we anticipated we would be. And I do want to note that we will have specific revenue discussion on April 21st with the council where we get into projections for specific funds, the transfers in and out, and so forth. So you'll see that level of specificity when we come back in April. A couple of important notes about the forecast, very much in line with the direction that we've maintained in the past. We have the cautious optimism underlying tone of our forecast. We are not including any assumptions associated with the mall. We are maintaining our 4% revenue growth estimates, which is in line with all the growth estimates that we're using for other reports, such as the land use assumption that you just adopted, and assuming a 3% level in expenditure growth. So again, making sure that we're maintaining that conservative approach in our revenues and a little bit more aggressive on our expenditures. The other item I want to point out on this chart is you'll see a table on there that highlights the amount of funding in our base budget ongoing revenue that we are building into our forecast to ensure that we can meet our Public Improvement Corporation bonds set aside. That's the increase in principal payment that we expect in 2019 associated with the ballpark bonds that were sold. And per council policy direction and the strategic plan, we are incrementally increasing that set aside every year by about $680,000 to make sure that in our base we are able to meet that $4.7 million principal payment in the event that the Arizona Sports and Tourism Authority reimbursement does not kick in until later. So that fundamental amount is built into those assumptions as well. Briefly regarding our other operating funds and our projections, our HERF revenue is a state shared revenue, and so we will get those estimates in March, and so we will refine that. We are also maintaining in our projections the general fund allocation that is given to that. Those funds are strictly restricted to street projects, And so we will go into more detail as far as what we recommend in line with our pavement management program as far as the general fund allocation to match our HERF allocation by the state. Sanitation, water, wastewater, and stadium are our enterprise funds. Sanitation, we are anticipating our expenditures to be within our revenues, maintaining that self-sufficiency. We have realized the savings results that we anticipated from the change in our bulk program, which we implemented a couple years ago. As you know, we have an annual increase in those, and so we are looking at making sure that we are staying within those savings amounts. We also did receive our increase index from Waste Management for next fiscal year, which is at 1.1%, so we are optimistic that we are meeting those requirements as well. We are also assuming no rate changes for our water and wastewater as we're looking to next fiscal year. As you know, we're in the middle of our rate study, and Council will be having a work session on that in March on the 17th. But for our projections for next fiscal year, we are maintaining those under our current rate structure, obviously because we will not have the rates adopted by that time. So we're maintaining our rates as they are today. And also with the stadium fund, maintaining our current operational subsidy that we have in place today. So as we talk about development of the budget for next year, there are some foundational principles that really have been developed as a result of discussions with the council, discussions with the leadership team, and have been summarized here to communicate to the public, to the staff, as far as what are some of those underlying principles that are guiding us as we have discussions with council and bring forward recommendations for next year's budget. As we've talked about, maintaining our conservative optimism approach, but making sure, obviously, that we do not want to anticipate revenues coming in higher than we anticipate because we cannot expend more than we collect. Employee considerations, as those are evaluated, and we talked about this also at the retreat, that there is really a data-driven approach, especially as we contemplate new authorized positions that we will be seeking for next fiscal year. So really looking at the performance measure data, the workload indicators, and using that to help prioritize some recommendations that will be coming forward to council. And then also, we have linked our update and our adoption process of the city strategic action plan with the budget process. So as you hear about and consider supplementals, that's linked directly to the strategic action plan. We will update the plan based on the council direction. And then also linking our priority-based budgeting, which you'll hear about in the supplemental process as we link those recommendations to our established programs. So the next work session that council will have in regards to the budget development process is next Monday. We'll be here reviewing the draft 10-year capital improvement plan, which is very exciting. It'll incorporate not only direction from the council, projects from the departments, but also the infrastructure improvement plan projects that you adopted this evening. That concludes my presentation. In summary, it is staff's recommendation that council adopt the second quarter budget transfers as presented, and I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Kim, well done. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Is there anyone in the audience would like to speak? Can I have a motion and a second, please, to receive the fiscal year 13-14 second quarter financial report and mid-year financial update and approval of approved fiscal year 13-14 second quarter budget transfers? Motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Councilman Stiff and a second by Vice Mayor Pizzillo. Open for council discussion. Well, this is first. See how good you did? My goodness. Oh, you had to break.
No, just a
Vice Mayor?
just a general comment. Listen, I appreciate, we had a talk today, you addressed the issues on there, I appreciate you tweaking it. Thank you.
Well, since you did that, I have to just say outstanding job. Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Well, we made it, huh?
That's a deep subject there, man.
All right, it's time for the council to talk. Do you have any comments or reports on events? Who would like to start? Don't all rush at one time.
I know, I think we're wearing down. I know that many of us attended quite a few things as a team this last week. And ULI, Tale of Two Cities, Westmark. So I'm just really going to hit on a couple that not everybody was at. And that was, both Wally and I attended the Wildfire HOA, and something that came out in Kim's report is something that the HOA is very excited about, and that's that plant replacement. And the funny thing is when we were there at the HOA meeting, they were really discussing that, and so it was nice to be able to inform them that they're about to
Nice
get
to have the answers, wasn't it?
well, we didn't have it that night, but had it for 'em in the morning, and so that was the good thing. I knew we were doing plant replacement, but I didn't know it was exactly in Wildfire. So that was a good thing, and they are very excited about that. Other thing was that actually Bill and I both attended the Veterans Day H3 stand down, and that's for the homeless vets in Arizona. And you know what? I have to really give my full appreciation to the groups that worked on that. Because I was able to be with many of those colleagues when I was the chair of homelessness for MAG, and seeing what they were doing come to full fruition and actually put an end to 222 homeless vets is very exciting, and they really should be commended for it. And not an end to them, an end to their homelessness. Okay. Really, Sherilyn, really. And so, but it's very exciting, and it's actually, those are the best practices that, you know what, Arizona can be proud of, and I'm planning on taking all of that framework with me to NLC to give the Human Development Steering Committee there, because those are important things. The other thing also is the aging in place that the city of Phoenix and all of Arizona is doing. I attended the Hope Golf Tournament, and actually the Flavors of the West that was yesterday was an incredible event, and it keeps getting larger, and I'll have to give everyone there a great bunch of kudos. But the good thing that the city of Goodyear did was that it was a partnership that they gave tickets for spring training baseball games. And let me tell you, in the bags, that was a highlight. Everybody was very excited about. So that was a good thing.
Good advertisement. Who's next?
That was everything. That was everything for me.
Oh, well, Vice Mayor?
Covered some of the same events, but what I was really honored about is over at the Tale of Two Cities, I was able to cover for the mayor the swearing in of 126 new citizens from 30 different countries.
That's cool.
Just
30 different
30
countries.
different countries. And I tell you, it's amazing watching that service. I mean, it was kind of brought tears to your eyes there. So it's a very moving service. I really enjoyed doing that event.
Next?
I have follow-ups for the manager, so when you get to that part.
Not quite there. Any other ones? Well, I'll just mention a couple. I went to the Three Rivers Historical Society, and I went for the subject matter. I mean, I thought it might be interesting, but I went because it was Mayor Shove speaking, and I just felt like I had to be in the audience, you know. It was so interesting. I had no idea that they had developed a number of products through that company. I just didn't. You know, you always hear Adapto, and it was really unique. In fact, I thought it was so unique, I said to him, you have to write a little book on it and put it out, because it was really valid information, historical information for us. So anyway, enjoyed it completely. The other thing, I go to GPEC a lot for different events, but they had a panel on competition in the market. And what GPEC does is they pick 3 cities or 4, and they send 2 people from the city to other cities. And then they observe their marketing programs. And not only that, the citizens' response, a sort of total picture. So, like they had Colorado and Salt Lake, and it was really, all the presentations we had, I think we got more out of that. Could tell how people compare us to other and where we are in that whole market. And then they asked the total panel, where would they move if they could? And Colorado won out, which I thought, of course, very interesting, because it was basically, it's so organic and they're so citizen-driven. They're organic. So, yeah, we won't go into that. And then, I
Now,
wanted,
the grass is not greener on the other side, okay? It's just not.
I'm not moving, don't worry. Even though you had that dream, I'm not moving. Okay. A couple of things else went on that I thought was worth mentioning. At the Westmark Annual, and I think we were all there, the annual breakfast they had, I thought that was very good, and the speakers were, and information. I had some special things happen. I went last night. I'm rather tired. It was this weekend, really.
It was busy.
Busy.
This was a busy
Does anybody else, I had 3 clothes changes and 3
There
long.
was a lot to do for families.
Yeah. So I was
There
the speaker at a dining in for the military wives. So there was about 350 of them. And my daughter was in town, and since she and her husband, he was in the Navy for 25 years, and we were or 20 years, and we were in the Air Force for 30 years, we gave a dual presentation.
Oh, wow, I'd love to have heard that.
It was a dining in of great amusement, and I won't go into
Dining in of
detail
great
of some of the
amusement. They were in
things that went on in the
costumes.
room, but the grog was,
There.
yes, it was there. So that's one of the
Grog
things
was
that-
grog.
Yeah, I wanted to mention it.
I've never had
Drink it.
Oh, no. I know the city manager is going to talk about this, but I'm sure you're going to talk about it. Staff, you did an outstanding job on that float.
The two cities.
It was just marvelous. I'm not going to go any more than that. So, anything else? It's over to you.
Mayor and members of the council, I actually have some follow-up items, and I do have some announcements, and it
Okay.
does include the Tell of Two Cities
Good.
parade. Let me do the follow-up first, and then it sounded like Councilmember Stipp had a question as well. Follow-up, it's pretty general, but from the presentations tonight, there were several that we have promised to get back to you on. That's as we start to work through the design guidelines, the accomplishments, what we're calling the hub, which is the innovation hub over at the library, quarterly updates on focus on success. So those are some of the follow-up items that staff will be doing that we got direction for tonight. And I didn't know if there were any other council inquiries before I get into information updates.
I think Councilman Osborne had one.
I just gonna quickly ask, because I think we have this policy, and I just want to clarify it, that I know that the race is coming soon, but I'm seeing them for the last week. We've got RVs parked around, I saw them at Target, let's just say, and they've been there for like 5 days, and I don't know what our policy is. I didn't think we allowed RVs to be parked in our parking lots, but I don't know. And so, I was a little early, but I just wasn't sure, so I wanted to have some follow-up on that.
We'll let you know what policy is. I do know that, for example, Walmart used to encourage that. I haven't been as much in touch with it. If it's a private property right that
Yeah,
allows
that's what I'm asking.
motorhomes in there or not. Sure. You know, private property rights, according to the police chief, so we would not have jurisdiction.
See, I thought there used to be ordinances long ago that said we wouldn't do that, but I don't know. Anyway, I just noticed it, and so I wasn't sure what policy was.
Okay. Next.
Yes, it's me now. The question that I had, and everything else I'm going to throw in an email, for the council's consideration, I guess, and question for the manager is, we've got April 14 and 15 slated for budget presentations. One of them is a work session before the meeting, presentations, and it's 2+ hours and then the meeting. That thought in the past we had done separate nights where it's standalone only for those budget presentations when we talk about the individual departments. Has something changed? Is that something that there's still room to negotiate on?
Yeah, Mayor and Councilmember Stipp, there are a lot of presentations that are coming to council, and it's really just trying to accomplish it a couple of ways. Short answer is yes, we're flexible on some of those timeframes, depending on council availability. But generally, what we try and do is look at council availability on off Mondays, other nights other than Monday for some of those special presentations, because those are obviously the major departments that will be presented. What they're faced with, what their budget priorities are. So it really comes down to a scheduling issue. We can certainly take a look at that again. I'm not sure, I'm looking at the finance and budget group if we have, but certainly we'll look at council's availability.
Well, and I think the question almost begs to the council is, how do you feel about a 2-hour work session before a regular meeting on the budget? Because one of them's on an off night, which is, for me is fine, and I'm not theoretically attacking that night, questioning having a 2-hour work session before we have a full-on agenda for the evening.
I can't be the one, because for me, I'm used to it. I've been doing it since 2005, and so I'm not a good one to ask. I think you only need to ask the rest of the council if you're.
That's how I'm just throwing it out there.
Right, thank you, I appreciate that. So, does anybody have any comment?
It's not.
Okay.
The answer is it's not the best for me, but I'm a team player. So,
I don't mind doing it if we're gonna have something to eat. But I don't wanna come at 3 o'clock and still be here at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
Because I run out of steam and,
The peanuts and jelly beans
just don't do it.
yeah, my M&Ms just aren't quite it.
4 hours.
So, if you're gonna,
And
yeah.
getting,
And we need to have
Yeah.
more breaks in food.
And we can now, like tonight, all you have to do is kind of give me the high sign, and we can take a break, okay? That's all I need.
We're ready.
I know you were going like this, and I didn't recognize you sometimes,
Too
and
late.
I'll try to remember who you are.
Oh, that's a plus.
I'll try to remember the right name, so we can do that. if
I'd
that'll
rather
be-
have it, I would rather do a Monday, knowing that, just like you said,
Yeah, I'm
we're used to
just so
Mondays.
used to- Well, you're used to it on
And just feed
TNT.
us, please.
I'm
Feed
just-
the animals.
Yeah.
Mayor and council, the other is we'll be really trying to keep the amount of items coming before you on that regular work session limited. So that's an opportunity, but that is 2 nights in a row. That's a Monday night and a Tuesday night as we have it right now.
Well, sometimes you have to do with the budget.
Any other comments?
No, everything else I'll throw in an email.
Okay.
Okay,
I
all
have
right.
an inquiry of the city manager.
Oh, right,
I would just like to know when we might expect the list of the mandated programs and by what department, and if it's state, federal, or city, so that out of the 1,000, we know what we cannot cut, that we have to provide.
Yes, Mayor and Councilmember Campbell, one of the things we talked with council is we do plan on bringing back the mandates in April. We will be looking at monthly coming back to council as it relates to the priority-based budgeting. And the first item that's coming out of the chute for council to look at is on mandates, and that will be in April.
Will we get the list before April so we can compare it to the 1,000 that you have? I mean, they said it's just a matter of sorting it. It's there, they just have to know how to go into the program and sort it out. I would assume, like an Excel document. They ought to be able to, you think? I mean, I don't necessarily want it tonight, but.
Yes, Deputy City Manager Lynette Reed, I was just consulting with her briefly. A couple of things are going on. One is while we'll be bringing back to the entire council the mandates and some of the benefits that we're already seeing out of the priority-based budgeting software, The other is we'll begin to have the smaller group meetings, the trainings, if you will, with the council during that month. As it relates to what information, how it's being presented to council, we just have the broad category of mandates right now, and that's typically broken up by federal, state, county. So we have it at those broad levels. That's what the software provides. But we'll be providing that to the entire council. And as we get closer to the presentation, we'll certainly let you know how that will look and feel. But at this point, it also depends how the detail level that council wants to go. So that's one that we're working on this together with the council. Right now, our staff, our management team is working through the model, seeing how they can best benefit from it. And then as we start to work with the council, we're going to get a better idea what the expectations of council are along the way as a group.
I just think it's important that we as council members know what we're mandated to provide. And there's no way we can even begin to guess, because I will be absolutely honest. I could not believe we had 1,000 programs that we administer in this city. I was flabbergasted. And in looking at them, it's just amazing what we do. And I just thought, well, it's just like getting Secretary Bennett's budget presentation with the Kleenex boxes. If this is mandated, this tells us how much we have left in our general fund that we can actually do something with. And that's all. I just wanted to know, how strapped are we as a city with state mandates, federal mandates, county mandates, and our own mandates?
I don't think you mean strap, do you?
Well,
Because strap
not
means,
strap, but
strap
we have to
means
do
you
it.
don't make the, strap
Yeah, we
means
have
we're in
to do it.
trouble.
Yeah.
So what you're looking for is the information.
Right, that we have to do,
Yeah.
that we cannot not do. That's all I'm asking.
And Councilmember Campbell, that's exactly what we're bringing to council in April, is on the mandates broken up by those categories you just described, federal, state, county, our own. Certainly, that's anticipated being in front of council in April.
Okay, as long as we don't vote.
Okay, where are we now? Are you needing,
Boy, information updates, and I'll get through this quickly, if I may. One is, Mayor, you brought up the Tell of Two Cities. It was the third annual. And question was, we had about 7,500 total that were there.
is that right? Really? That many came? See, I left,
About 2,500 more than last year.
I left early. Unfortunately, I had to, but it didn't seem like that at all. So good.
And that includes the parade and the festival itself. And we did win Best Adaptation, City of Goodyear did. And there were about 90 exhibitors there, which was an increase of 25 from last year. But we'll get into more detail. I know the hour's late. We'll actually be in front of council to recognize many folks that were part of this. And while the flow did well, we had obviously police and fire that were part of this. We got to show off the victory motorcycles, the segways. I think we all want to take home and play with it, but they told us no. The other is on rating agency announcements. I won't go into a lot of detail. You got this from the manager's report, but I will say that I give a lot of credit to this council and to the management team, the finance department, for how we maintain and actually improved with our Standard & Poor's ratings from a AA- to a AA. So we're doing well, and that's because of the policies that you have in place. Mayor, you'd asked about the pension burden. And while we won't dwell on it, what I'd like to say is we do have a low defined pension burden on our city as it relates to certainly some of other counterparts. That's through both ASRS and PRS as of June 2012. So right now, the pensions burdens or pressures, while they're growing as our workforce grows in years of service, right now it seems to be extremely manageable for this city. There are just a couple of, lastly, there was a question on when we get to hear one of our favorite national anthem singers. So don't have her first name, Miss Garcia will actually be at the March 7th game singing the anthem.
Great.
I have others as it relates to police and public safety. I'll get you to, and fire, I'll get you in the manager's report this week. We've had a phenomenal outreach by police and fire with the community. Instead of highlighting all those right now, I'll do those later. Last thing is while it was said that council attends a lot of events, I have to tell you, as a manager being at those events, and the amount of people that come up and just say, wow, the level of participation that we have from this council that attends, whether it's Westmark, ULI Trends Day, parade, I mean, on and on. This council's out there in force, and the community certainly, I think, recognize it, but I would tell you that outsiders absolutely recognize it as well. So thank you for all the time you
Thank
put
you.
into
I
it.
hear that all the time out and about. People are just stunned at how much.
That's all.
Oh, thank you. So the next meeting is a work session, a regular meeting and a special meeting on March 3rd, beginning at 5 o'clock. So this meeting is adjourned.